Hook marched ahead with small, fiercely determined steps, dragging Bai Luan straight up to Fesman. She looked up at her father, her round face suddenly serious, and announced that the mysterious mister could fix his back pain. Fesman didn't take her seriously. He eyed Bai Luan's clothes, odd for the lower district, and then the earnest little girl. He assumed she'd found a friendly stranger to play along. How could a chronic back problem be fixed with a single poke? Still, he didn't want to spoil her game. He'd pretend the pain was gone when this was over. He offered Bai Luan his hand with a tired, kind smile. His hand was a miner's hand, rough, thick with calluses and deep lines, mining dust ingrained under the nails from years of hard labor. Bai Luan produced a small extraction gun and went to work. He drew the pain out as if plucking a thorn. When he stepped back, Fesman found himself staring, stunned. No, did this actually cure me? A miracle worker, it seemed. Daddy, Daddy, does it still hurt? Hook's eyes were bright with hope. Fesman blinked, pushing down the sudden churn of disbelief in his chest. He ruffled Hook's hair and, honestly relieved, said, No, not at all. It's thanks to the divine doctor Hook found. Hook giggled, proud as a kitten. Hook will get your reward. She dashed into the house and came back with a slightly battered but carefully cleaned tin can. For a moment, a shadow of worry crossed her face, but she handed it over without hesitation. This is all Hook's saved treasures. They're all for you. Bai Luan shook the tin and heard the heavy clink inside. He didn't open it, didn't need to. Whatever was in there was clearly precious to her. He accepted it without refusing. Pride and promises mattered to Hook the great pitch-dark Hook. That's plenty. A fine trade, Bai Luan said, pocketing the tin. He crouched to Hook's height and offered a palm. High five? Hook slapped his hand with a bounce. After the high five, Bai Luan's face turned serious. Hook, I actually have an important request. Hook cocked her head. What? He glanced at Fesman, then lowered his voice, playing at secrecy. Let's go somewhere else to talk. It's about the moles. Hook's expression matched his seriousness. She called over to her father. Daddy, I'm going out for a bit. All right, be back before dark. Don't go too far. Bai Luan nodded and walked off with Hook. It had been a long time since the little girl had found an adult who would play along. Despite his strange clothes, he seemed kind. Hook led him to the moles' secret base. We can talk here. I've heard of Hook the Great's reputation for ages, Bai Luan said. I want to join the moles. Hook frowned. Adults can't join the moles, even if Hook likes you. I know. An honorary membership will be enough. In return, I have a gift. He produced a jumble of parts he'd scavenged, nano-robots mixed with spare mechanics, and in a few quick movements assembled a satchel that seemed impossibly compact and cleverly made. Curiosity, he said with a grin. Hook's satchel. Don't let the size fool you. It holds a lot, and it can even produce jumpy dumpties, perfect for go fish blasting with Klee. Hook's eyes widened. Bai Luan then added a small AI into the satchel's weave, setting it to keep an eye on her. A satchel can't buy Hook off. No means no. Are you sure you don't want it? Bai Luan asked. No, Hook snapped, but her voice betrayed excitement. Without another word, Bai Luan picked up an iron box nearby about Hook's height. Then, to her astonishment, simply stuffed the whole box into the tiny satchel. He really did. Hook gaped. How did you do that? Magic and tricks, Bai Luan said with a casual shrug. Hook barely cared about his odd tone. She stared at the satchel as if it were a treasure chest of endless possibilities. With this, she could carry her digger anywhere and hide all the things she didn't want the old hag to find. Her eyes lit up. That's not even the best part, Bai Luan continued. It's got a talking little sprite inside. Really? Hook whispered. Only the bravest, greatest, most adventurous kid leaders in the world can earn its approval, Bai Luan added, smiling. Hook looked at him skeptically. How do I know you're telling the truth? It's simple. Bai Luan handed her the satchel. Call its name and see if it answers. Hook hesitated, then tried. Hello? I'm here, Hook the Great, pitch-dark Hook. Your loyal servant is at your command. The satchel replied in a bright, obedient voice. Wow, it really talks, Hook beamed. She was sold. Hook accepts. Hook put the satchel on, buckling it at her waist. You can be an honorary member of the moles, she declared, striking a leader's pose. I'll call you Mysterious Mister. I am deeply honored, Hook the Great, Bai Luan said, bowed. Then the satchel is yours. Hook's new satchel has mysterious powers and will help you against bad guys, the satchel chimed. Really? Can a satchel help me beat bad guys? Hook asked, skeptical but hopeful. Of course, Bai Luan said, flashing a smile but not explaining everything. He didn't want to tell her the satchel could produce jumpy dumpties outright, let it surprise her. When you need it, the sprite will warn you. What will Hook have to do then? Just grab whatever the satchel gives you and throw it at the bad guy. Hook frowned. What are you talking about? Bai Luan only offered a mysterious smile. I am the mysterious mister. I can't be too plain. Farewell, Hook the Great. I expect you'll meet more companions in the coming days. He left her with a riddle, waved, and started to walk away. Hook called after him, but when she looked up he was gone, as if the whole afternoon had been an illusion. She scratched her head, glancing at the satchel at her waist. Are you still there, little satchel? She asked. I'm here, Hook the Great. Always here. Where did the mysterious mister go? If I knew, he wouldn't be the mysterious mister, would he? The satchel replied. Bai Luan had triggered his mech's mimicry to put on a theatrical exit, quite fitting for a mysterious persona. It was entertaining, and the kid play had been fun. Yo, friend, you new around here? A teasing voice called from the shadows. Bai Luan turned to see Sampo lounging against the wall, one eyebrow arched and a sly smile playing across his face. What a surprise. It's been a while since I ran into a colleague. I didn't expect the masked fool to show up here. Bai Luan bristled. I am not the masked fool. You can fool others, Sampo said, chuckling, but not old Sampo. Pretending to be foolish won't work on me. If you're not the masked fool, Sampo went on, why is the joyful god always watching you? Bai Luan pouted and answered lightly, I don't know what he's thinking. Personally, I think he owes me. 102. Let me try to cure the disease. That's quite a boast, Sampo said. Believe it or not. Bai Luan had already been conned by Aha once. He didn't want to waste words arguing. It's fine. Old Sampo won't blab. Tell me, what are you doing here? My purpose, huh? Bai Luan thought a moment, leaned toward Sampo, who obediently brought his ear closer. I'm here to find uncivilized primitives, then fool them into thinking I'm a professional photographer with a rocket launcher. Sampo stared at him as if seeing a god. No wonder the Lord of Mirth looks at you the way he does. Haha, just kidding. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm friendly. If you don't believe me, ask Natasha. Or would you like to see my true face? Bai Luan ripped off his mask to show his face. Ask anything. I'll tell you straight. You weren't talking like that to Hook just now. You say things to suit the person you're talking to. Hey, I like that. Seems you and I, old Sampo, are both honest, good men. Bai Luan watched Sampo deliver that line with a perfectly straight face. As he just said, you tailored your words to the listener. Bai Luan smiled. Do you believe me now? Of course. How could old Sampo lie? Since you're new here, if you need anything, you can come to me. After all. A sharp glint lit Sampo's eyes. We are both masked fools. We should help each other. I'll remember. But one thing I should make clear. Bai Luan straightened, turning serious. I'm really not a masked fool. Then he left. Sampo watched him go and murmured, there are so many outsiders lately. Bellobog might be about to change. He'd been in Gerillo so long, done so much, and Elio still hadn't made a move. Whatever he'd done hadn't shifted the script enough. Time to be bolder. Bai Luan decided he was going to fix the creation engine and see if he could seize control. As a normal man, how could he pass up the chance to pilot a giant mech? If Cocolia used the blazing lance to move the creation engine, the colossal thing would rise, plant a fist like a sandbag, and under his control, it would smash Cocolia to pieces. Just thinking about it made him giddy. He headed for the restricted zone, skirting the Silvermane guard posts with a small detour, treating the walk as a chance to enjoy the snow. Suddenly, a powerful soundtrack filled his head, the BGM that always played when Sam appeared. In the next instant, a humanoid mech crashed down before him in a burst of crimson flame. The heat vaporized the snow, sending mist curling into the air. A mechanical hand forced the fog aside, revealing the mech's full form. You must stop here. You cannot go any further. Blocking his path was the Stellaron hunter, Sam. Or rather, Sam piloted by Firefly. Bai Luan understood why Firefly was here, but the music in his head puzzled him. Where had it come from? It was still playing. Harmony acting up? A voice in his head said, I provided the BGM. Crazy. Another voice added, tell me if it sounds cool or not. No argument. The music was cool. Bai Luan shook his attention free from the system and looked at Sam. So, Elio sent you? Sam didn't answer, only repeated, stop here. It's better for both of us. Bai Luan chuckled and activated his nano armor. The suit surged up, encasing him. Good opportunity to gather combat data and upgrade his mech. What if I insist on going through? Sam studied Bai Luan's mech, so similar to his own, for a beat, then adopted a combat stance. Two silver-white mechs, mirror images, faced off on the endless snowfield. Then they vanished from their original spots, leaving shattered snow pits. Their forms blurred in the storm. Only when fists met with thunderous claps did two hazy outlines solidify for an instant. After a few exchanges, Bai Luan had the data he wanted. Close combat was pointless now. As Sam launched a heavy punch, Bai Luan's eyes narrowed. A section of nano armor peeled away and transformed into 12 sharp floating cannon units. The cannons, as if with intent, streaked toward Sam from impossible angles. Sam's experience showed. His punch stopped mid-trajectory, then re-aimed with brutal speed to knock away the first three cannons. Bai Luan backed up and kept the others at work. The displaced guns darted back into formation, 6 like silver stinging bees, twisting in weird arcs to compress Sam's evasion space. The other 6 climbed high, muzzles glowing as they charged a searing energy, vaporizing snow before it could fall. Up, down, left, right, the escapes were closing. One focused spear of light would topple him and open him to a storm of follow-up fire. The floating blades screamed. A beam of judgment shot out. Just as disaster loomed, boom! A torrential, blistering stream of flame erupted from Sam's core. Crimson fire roared out like a caged beast, devouring everything in its path. Bai Luan slammed up a full-power force field. The blue barrier shuddered, barely holding the blast. The floating cannons weren't so lucky. They ignited and melted in the inferno, gone in moments. Flames carved a blackened wound across the white field. Snow around them dried, soil cracked and baked. Sam stood in the scorched center, fire roaring from the chest core and weaving into 2 violent rings of light around his armor. Bai Luan glanced at Sam, then at his own data readout. Almost enough, just enough for a single upgrade. If Firefly managed to ignite the Stellaron, he'd be in trouble. He stowed his weapons. Firefly, stop. At the name, Sam hesitated and the flames guttered out. How did you know? Everyone has a secret or two. The scorched patch was quickly buried by falling snow. A flash of crimson, and Firefly disengaged from the Sam mech. She cupped a snowflake and watched it melt in her palm. Bai Luan, curious, stepped from his mech as well. Why trust me enough to shut down? You were testing me. The power in those floating cannon beams was mostly for show. Firefly smiled as she watched him. You remind me of a comrade I once fought beside. I never expected to meet another Iron Cavalry like this. I should charge royalties for the appearance of my mech, Bai Luan muttered, but Firefly didn't catch the jibe. Instead, she said, I've actually been watching you for a long time. How long? Let me think. She paused. From when you broke through this planet's atmosphere and arrived. So that's it. Bai Luan nodded. In my script, Elio gave me 3 chances to stop you. First at the mechanical settlement, second at the clinic, and now. Why didn't you act the first 2 times? Because you were doing good. If I have a choice, why stop you? If you really think I'm a good person. Bai Luan pulled out his extraction gun and twirled it, watching the faint traces of entropy loss syndrome starting to mar Firefly's features. He smiled with a hint of something sharp. How about I try to cure your illness? 103. 2 freshmen. May I ask, how much do you know about me? Glamoth Iron Cavalry, part of the Empire of Deception, were weapons of war meant to be discarded after use. Sam's past flickered through Bai Luan's mind. I think bringing up your past would be too cruel, he said. Sam smiled. You really are a good person, just like Silver Wolf said. I didn't expect her to praise me so highly, Bai Luan replied. Usually she's not that charitable. Sam recalled Silver Wolf's brief introduction before she'd left with the script and couldn't help smiling at the memory of her friend's exasperated expression. The script says, I'll get what I want this time. Bai Luan tilted the extraction gun in his hand. So you want me to treat you? I have nothing to fear, Sam said, but I should warn you, the script mentions the treatment might trigger some unexpected incident. Oh? Bai Luan raised an eyebrow. Did it say what kind of incident? Sam shook her head. Not explicitly, but I think whatever happens won't be borne by me. The subject of the incident might be you. Why warn me? Because I'd rather there be more good people in the world. All right, Miss Sam, no need to worry about me. Bai Luan bowed slightly. I'm still number 85 in the Genius Society. If I let a little incident scare me away, I'd be selling myself short. That's good. Sam stepped forward and offered her arm. She had been away from her mech too long. Traces of entropy loss had begun to show on her hands. Smiling, she said, "Whether this works or not, thank you for taking the risk to save me." "This is to settle a debt," Bai Luan said, producing an S-grade bullet and loading it into the gun, "and for a firefly that wants to live." He said no more, concentrating on the extraction gun. The cyan substance, the visible sign of entropy loss, slowly filled the bullet. As the patterns on Sam's body faded, pain crossed her face, but she stayed silent, unwilling to let anything interrupt the treatment. The extraction was unusually slow. It took 20 full minutes. When he finally removed the bullet, it glowed cyan, the same color as the fading patterns. Bai Luan studied it. Curio, extraction gun bullet, entropy loss. A deliberately engineered genetic defect used to destroy weapons that have outlived their purpose. "It's a pity Glamoth is gone," he murmured. "Otherwise, I'd shoot this into the bodies of those who made it." He pocketed the bullet and looked back at Sam. Her face was pale and unsteady. "Are you all right?" I'm fine. Is it over?" "Yes, it's over. Congratulations, Sam, you're healed." Sam smiled, then went limp. A portion of Bai Luan's nanobots detached and propped her as she collapsed. He examined the extraction gun, noting its effects. Some treatments rendered patients unconscious. Then he understood what Sam meant by the incident. The unconscious Sam was a sort of shackle, Elio's way of preventing her from interfering with the script. Bai Luan couldn't just leave her in the freezing wasteland, and there was no one nearby he could trust to look after her. Any attempt to find help would likely be derailed by the kinds of coincidences Elio had engineered. If he tried to use the Anywhere door to get to the space station, some curio there might run amok. If he went to Natasha's, fracture creatures could swarm. If he sought out the train crew, who knew if an asteroid with mysterious power would suddenly strike? Entrusting Sam to someone else would probably spawn countless futures that delayed him. Elio must have sacrificed a lot of brain power to make sure he couldn't interfere with the script. Fine. If Elio went to such lengths, Bai Luan would comply. No interference. After all, the ending was satisfactory, so there was no need to intervene. He used his nanobots to support Sam and searched for a temporary shelter. After an unknown interval, Sam slowly woke. She opened her eyes to an unfamiliar ceiling and found herself lying on a wooden bed, a quilt thoughtfully tucked around her. She sat up, rubbing her head. The quilt slid free. The cabin was small and simple, just a bed and a burning fireplace. It was clear the place hadn't been used for long, but someone had cleaned it recently. Awake? Bai Luan's voice came from the window. He leaned against the sill, looking out at the white landscape. Wind rattled his clothes and sent a few snowflakes skittering through the slightly open window. They melted the moment they entered the warm cabin. The little hearth wasn't enough to explain the temperature. Bai Luan's nanobots provided most of the heat. He'd lit the fire for the feel of it. A cabin in the snow without a hearth lit always seemed incomplete. From the window, he could see the engine of creation standing upright. Not long before Sam woke, it had lain back down again. Presumably, Star's side of things had settled. Everything had gone according to the script. The Aeon of Preservation glanced at Star, struck the anvil, and pushed the Amber Era forward. As Bai Luan had expected, Sam awoke as soon as the business on Star's side was finished. She looked at her hands. No more entropy marks. She was truly healed. "How can I repay you?" she asked. "It's simple. Answer one question." Bai Luan still faced the snowy view. "How do you feel now that you've recovered?" Sam had fought so hard to reach this point. Even now, fully well, a dreamlike unreality lingered. At peace, relaxed, comfortable. Her eyes drifted. Memories rose unsummoned. The swarm, countless iron cavalry falling, the scorched earth and corpses. Of the Glamoth Iron Cavalry, who had matched the swarm in numbers, only Sam had ultimately survived. She pressed her hands to her chest and felt her heart steady and strong, life surging through her veins. A real smile spread across her face. It wasn't easy. No, it wasn't. Bai Luan gave a small laugh, exactly the answer he had wanted. His voice held an odd warmth. The position Elio arranged for me was generous. To think he let me witness 2 rebirths at once. He added more quickly, almost to himself. He knows what I like to see. Sam laughed, repeating, "You really are a good person, just like Silver Wolf said." "A good person?" Bai Luan watched a snowflake fall over Jarilo, held out his hand and watched it melt on his palm. "Maybe I only know that being ill hurts a lot," he smiled. He was in a good mood. Illness healed, snow stopped falling, and today would be remembered. Because today on Jarilo, 2 new lives were born. 104. Do you want to make the world a better place? Honestly, Bai Luan's sense of involvement on Jarilo 6 had never been that strong. For most of the time, he hadn't been in the main spotlight. He'd been working behind the scenes. Make friends? Easy. Give them things they shouldn't have? Also easy. But he couldn't derail Stella's growth. That seemed to be the limit Elio would tolerate. Minor details could change, but the main plot had to stay on its rails. Otherwise, a Stellaron hunter would be refreshed to stop him. It felt like a game between him and Elio. Bai Luan did what suited his nature, and Elio offered acceptable chips to keep him from meddling too much. For example, Firefly shouldn't have recovered so soon. After thinking it over, Elio traded her early recovery as a concession to keep Bai Luan from interfering with the plot. It wasn't an unacceptable bargain. Bai Luan was perfectly happy with this arrangement. Though he'd told Heita he could see the future, in truth, he only foretold things by leaning on memories from his previous life. He couldn't actually predict the future. The more he interfered, the less clear the future became. Having someone nudging the intensity, using his own insight to keep the main plot roughly where it should be, was to his advantage. Why wouldn't he enjoy it? Besides, it was convenient. If the story continued to follow the timeline he remembered, he could keep reaping the benefits of his past life with almost no effort. All the parts that took thinking could be left to Elio. Dumping all the hard bits on someone else felt wonderfully freeing. Still, he had to be careful not to push Elio too far. If he caused Elio too much trouble and triggered his hiss mode, Elio would stop arranging things like a chance meeting between him and Black Swan. Anyone would crack under that sort of pressure. By now the script Elio had handed Firefly was complete. She came to say goodbye. "Thank you, Bai Luan," she said. "You're welcome." Bai Luan waved casually and then asked, "Have you thought about what you'll do after you recover?" "Besides pursuing recovery, there are other things I want to understand," she answered. "I'll need time. I'll probably continue as the Stellaron Hunter, Sam." "Oh, may I ask? Why live and why die?" Bai Luan paused, then laughed. He felt, for some inexplicable reason, as if he'd found a kindred spirit. Maybe their similarity ran deeper than just their mech forms. "Those 2 questions can take a lifetime. Then I'll spend a lifetime on them. Now I can experience life more as Firefly, and I'll find the answers eventually." Bai Luan nodded. "Enjoy life to the fullest." "I will." She smiled and took out her transformation device. Crimson flames flashed, and Firefly was in the Sam mech again. Sam inclined her head to Bai Luan, the thrusters behind her flaring, and she pirouetted into the sky before shooting toward the horizon. In a blink, she was gone. Bai Luan watched the retreating figure and murmured, "She's badass." With Firefly gone, the remaining events on Jarilo V6 no longer mattered to him. He could do whatever he liked. First on the list, repair the creation engine and take it for a proper spin before leaving Jarilos. But he might as well check on Stelly and the others first. He wondered if they'd think he'd disappeared. He found the 3 train crew members sooner than he expected, and their reactions surprised him. "Uncle, your presence is too strong, isn't it?" Stelly said. "Ever since we came to the underworld, it feels like your shadow is everywhere." Yeah, March 7th nodded. "Let's see, Natasha, Clara, Hook, that unreliable Sampo. After all that, it seems only Seely in the underworld hasn't run into you." "Am I that famous?" Bai Luan scratched his head and tried to think of a counterexample. Oleg hasn't met me, right? He may not have seen you, but he knows you, even praised you as a good person." "All right." Bai Luan shrugged and accepted it. He'd been quite active in the background. Kokoli has been defeated, and the Stellaron is about to be sealed by Himeko and Mr. Yang. What are you planning to do next? Uncle, how do you know everything? Stella asked. Bai Luan was too lazy to invent an excuse. Because I know some magic tricks, he said, deliberately stretching his tone. Wow. Stella's eyes lit up. Can I learn some magic tricks from you? Dan Heng sighed and looked at the two of them being playful. After the Stellaron is sealed, its influence on the space anchor will vanish, and we should be leaving Geralof 6 very soon. Is that so? Bai Luan nodded. Then I won't go with you. I want to stay on Geralo a while longer. Huh? Why, Uncle? Didn't you board the train so you could go back to the space station whenever you changed your mind? Stella sounded puzzled. Actually, I have a nifty gadget. Bai Luan produced the Anywhere door and gave Stella a quick rundown of what it did. With this, whenever you want to return to the space station, I can appear by your side at any time. He fixed her with a mock-serious look. I'll do my best to persuade you to stay on the train. Stella blinked and glanced at March 7th and Dan Heng before shaking her head. Actually, I don't really want to go back to the space station. See? When you're actually told to go, you're not happy. Hey. The space station will always welcome you to test simulated universes. Sven Bai Luan added, waving at them. Well then, farewell for now. We'll meet again. He turned and left. Stella watched his receding back, thinking he'd made some kind of decision. She stepped forward and called out, loud and earnest, Uncle, take care. I'll miss you. Bai Luan's back stiffened. Then he shouted in a flustered, half-panicked voice, I am not your uncle. Stella beamed with satisfaction. Teasing Bai Luan was an essential part of her life as a nameless. March 7th glanced at her and smiled helplessly. You didn't let him off either. This is an unbreakable bond between me and my uncle, Stella declared. Dan Heng opened his mouth to call it a fated rivalry, then thought better of it. Stella might start calling him cold-faced little azure dragon, and that sounded like more trouble than it was worth. Silence was the safer option. That day, the Astral Express streaked across the sky and left the frozen world behind. Bai Luan, however, knocked on Natasha's clinic door. When she opened it, he gave a small smile and asked softly, Natasha, would you like to make a deal with me to make this world a better place? P.S. It's not that I'm deliberately holding back chapters. If I hadn't accidentally hit the wrong button and added more chapters last time, this wouldn't have happened. Guess it's still my fault. 105. I want to see scenery other than snow. As leader of the underworld, Natasha introduced Bai Luan to Bronya and acted as witness to prove he really could change the world. Star and the others had mentioned Bai Luan before, but Natasha's claim that one person could alter an entire world stretched Bronya's beliefs. Bai Luan understood her skepticism. Doubt is the first step to understanding, so he had Natasha bring the relic heater. Bronya eyed the heater with suspicion. It was allegedly several times more efficient than any ordinary model. Too much of an improvement, too illogical. Still, she wanted it to be true. If so, life in Belobog could improve drastically. She asked Serval to inspect it. Serval carefully disassembled the relic heater Bai Luan had whipped up, then praised it outright. After Serval's approval, Bronya's respect for Bai Luan grew immediately. Thank you for your contribution to Belobog. As Supreme Guardian, I extend our gratitude on behalf of everyone. I appreciate it, Bai Luan said. If it means anything to you, I can accept a medal, some symbol of your highest honor. We can talk about medals later. That heater isn't important. I made it on a whim. When Bai Luan said that, Bronya's pupils dilated. You made it on a whim? How far ahead was his technological tree compared to Belobog's? What else can you do? I can repair the engine of creation, Bai Luan said. Bronya blinked. And I can mass-produce cities like Belobog. Bronya fell silent, then looked at him carefully. The heater proved something, but what you're saying goes far beyond it. This was the problem with a planet newly connected to the wider network. On a planet familiar with the Genius Society, Bai Luan could have said, I am Genius Society in 85, and explained everything. Belobog, though, had never heard the name. Bai Luan tried to explain his dome technology in the simplest terms, a man-made ecosystem that harnesses subterranean vein energy to form an energy shield and then controls the interior temperature with engineered systems, creating a habitation-friendly environment. Serval listened as if she'd been punched in the gut. She felt like she was falling behind. Was she out of touch with research? In front of Bai Luan, she felt like a new recruit. Sela nudged Bronya and whispered, "What's he babbling about?" Bronya admitted, "I don't understand either." Bai Luan simplified it further. Serval exchanged a helpless look with Bronya and said, "I don't quite get it, but it sounds real." Bronya's next thought was practical. "Do you believe me now?" She fell silent for a moment and asked the inevitable question, "What's the price?" "I have a few requests," Bai Luan said, and laid them out. Bronya braced herself. Such breakthroughs often came at steep cost. He listed 3 conditions. First, he would not provide the materials to repair the engine of creation. They had to supply those themselves. Second, they needed to learn and build the dome technology on their own. He would not do the construction for them. Third, when he needed subterranean vein resources in the future, Belobog must prioritize supplying him, and he would pay market price. "That's it?" Bronya asked, incredulous. Bai Luan nodded. To her, it seemed almost like a gift. Seeing her expression, he added, "Don't take it lightly. These aren't small tasks. Both resources and time are vital." He paused and then said, "Especially the third point. If I come back in a few hundred years, people might not remember me. How will you guarantee I still get priority access to the vein?" Bronya thought it over, then replied, "We will write you into Belobog's history, so your priority remains, even centuries from now. As for the first 2 points," she smiled faintly, "don't worry, we've survived by solving problems like these in the ice and snow." Seeing a people accustomed to hardship stirred something in him. Bai Luan could have repaired the engine of creation immediately and gathered the necessary resources with little trouble. His activities weren't constrained. He could extract what was buried under the ice. But he didn't want to hand them a miracle. If the Jarilo people didn't solve their own problems, the help would be meaningless. So he decided to quietly lower the difficulty and let Bronia's team solve the rest. A bit of humanitarian aid and a subtle easing of the survival curve would be enough. He took out a carefully prepared materials list and handed it to Bronya. She accepted it with both hands. "I'll gather these as fast as possible." Some years down the line, if anyone in Belobog ever dug into the history, they might discover that the list couldn't actually repair the engine of creation as written. It was, in part, an Easter egg Bai Luan left for them. He smiled at the thought of whatever faces would greet that discovery. He also packaged the dome knowledge into an unlocking process, a chain of challenges, and entrusted it to Svarog for safekeeping. "I've hidden the treasures in the mechanical settlement. Go find them." With Bai Luan's departure, the era of scientific research in Belobog officially began. The king of scientific research is proudly serialized. Cough, wrong channel, wrong channel. He wasn't gone yet. The materials list had been calibrated to Belobog's present capabilities, just at the edge of what they could achieve. Bronya spent every effort collecting them, and 7 days later, finally had everything. When she returned to tell Bai Luan the materials were ready, she looked exhausted, her eyes ringed with darkness and her steps unsteady. Coordinating people, allocating resources, and persuading skeptics had worn her out. Bai Luan suggested she rest first, but she shook her head and pushed on. She reported everything, then produced 2 signed contracts, one for Bai Luan, the other for the architects, finalizing their cooperation. Bronya kept one contract and handed the other to Bai Luan, then let out a long, weary sigh. A weight had been lifted. Before she left, she shared something more personal. While collecting materials, a wealthy man helped a lot. He led fundraising and donated most of his assets. He asked me to tell you he wishes to meet you. "He wants to meet me?" Bai Luan asked. Bronya nodded. "Yes, his ideas are unusual. He said he would give you all his assets in exchange for a ship that can fly to the stars. People here long for the stars, even in a world of endless snow." "Did he say why he wants to go?" Bronya quoted him directly. "I want to see scenery beyond the snow." Bai Luan's eyes flickered with understanding. "Let him come meet me." 106. See you in the galaxy. Bai Luan had always pictured someone who said words like that would be in their 30s or 40s, old enough to have built something meaningful, young enough to still remember why they started. He He was surprised then when the man who had spoken to him showed up with a head full of white hair. Years had left their marks: snow-white hair, a stooped frame, but bright, lively eyes that refused to dim. "Hello, honored guest," Bai Luan said. The old man moved with an easy agility and bowed. "Just call me Bai Luan. What's your name?" "Edward. I heard from Bronya that you want to trade all your assets for a spaceship?" "Yes. I don't know if the old things I own add up to a spaceship, but if they do, it would be an honor." Bai Luan smiled. He'd already seen Edward's asset list and converted it into credit points, more than enough to buy a ship. Jarilo simply lacked the channels to make it happen himself. "You're not young anymore. Are you sure you can handle interstellar travel?" Edward smiled back, steady and certain. "Mr. Bai Luan, do you have a moment for a story? I won't take long." "Of course. Thank you." Edward bowed slightly. "When I was young, the fracture hadn't yet expanded to Belobog. My beloved and I lived a ways from the city. When she was well, we loved to wander and see the sights. Later, she fell ill and spent most of her days confined to bed, watching the world through the window. She watched the snow for the rest of her life. With her last breath, she told me she wanted to see the scenery beyond the snow. I held her hand and promised to protect her for life. No one falls in love with a mound of dirt, but I buried her myself." He gave a self-deprecating laugh. "Then the fracture spread, and where we'd lived was no longer safe. I'd meant to die beside her, but a friend dragged me into the city. Now, the only thing left that connects me to her is this." He produced a simple, worn necklace. It had no ornament and showed its age in every scratch, but to Edward it was more precious than all his other assets. He put it back on and looked at Bai Luan with a resolute light in his eyes. "Mr. Bai Luan, I thought my life would just pass like that, but when I heard about you, I knew it was time to go. This is the moment I've waited my whole life for. My beloved's last wish is my dream. I want to leave and see what lies beyond the snow. Even if I die among the stars, I will have no regrets." Bai Luan met Edward's gaze and saw the young man he had once been. Age could not erase that spark. "I can give you a spaceship," Bai Luan said, "but it will take a little time." "How long?" Bai Luan considered, then answered, "About 3 days." "For the second half of my life, 3 days are nothing," Edward said, smiling, and bowed. "Thank you, Mr. Bai Luan. I finally have a chance to take her necklace and see the scenery beyond the snow." 3 days later, Edward returned, meticulous in every detail: neat clothes, a packed suitcase, the worn necklace against his chest. He had transferred the rest of his assets to Bai Luan, but Bai Luan didn't hurry him aboard the ship right away. Seeing Edward puzzled, he said quietly, "I want you to see your wife before you leave." Before Edward could ask what he meant, a tremor ran through the ground. He looked up and saw something he never expected to see. The engine of creation marched forward, slow and enormous, and with it an escort of Silvermane guards. Bronya herself stepped up and saluted Edward. "Thank you for your contributions to Belobog. Please allow us to escort you on this last journey." The engine raised its massive fist and swept aside fracture creations in its path, clearing a path. The Silvermane guards formed a solemn escort and led Edward forward, step by step, toward the place where his beloved lay buried. He recognized the mound of earth instantly. He had not expected to have a chance to see her again. There were so many things he wanted to tell her after so long. Edward walked to the grave with slow, careful steps. Bronya meant to follow, but Bai Luan's hand stopped her. "Stand guard here. Give him some privacy," he said, watching Edward's back. "He must have a lot to say. Besides, you're not here for him alone. The guards still need to reclaim this place, don't they? Go on, take care of it." Bronya nodded, and alongside Sela, went to clear the area of the remaining fracture creatures. After an unknown stretch of time, Edward returned. "Well?" Bai Luan asked quietly. "After seeing her, do you want to stay?" "No," Edward answered. "If she were still here." He smiled and took the necklace in his hand. "If she were here, she'd be ready to go with me. I won her heart by taking her everywhere back then." Bai Luan looked at the necklace and smiled. He had arranged a company ship for Edward, fully equipped with an intelligent onboard AI, so Edward could travel the stars even without prior piloting experience. Bai Luan had stocked the ship with supplies and loaded its star chart with famous scenic coordinates across the universe. In short, he He had prepared everything for this special traveler. The ship, waiting in Jarilo's orbit, received Bai Luan's signal and descended. Edward watched it approach until it landed with a whisper of displaced air. The hatch opened and a set of retractable steps extended. Before him lay his beloved's last wish and his lifelong dream. White-haired and grinning like a child freed to run, Edward climbed the steps one by one. Before he entered the cabin, he turned and looked at Bai Luan and the Silvermane guards assembled to see him off. "If there's another chance, let's meet in the galaxy." Bai Luan paused, then smiled and waved. "See you in the galaxy." The hatch closed slowly. The ship rose, a streak of light against the clouds, like a meteor in reverse, breaking free from the gravity of ice and snow and heading toward the stars. Edward sat in the cockpit, watching the world fall away until the ship pierced the atmosphere and entered the sparkling void. He breathed deeply and pressed a hand to the necklace at his chest. "Ina," he whispered, "do you see it? The scenery beyond the snow. Let's go see more together." P.S. Yesterday, a reader pointed out what looked like a bug in the background lore, and the discussion was interesting enough that I want to share it. Think of it as chatting with friends who love Honkai, Star Rail. I originally considered putting this in the author's notes, but 300 words wouldn't do it justice. This chapter already runs long without padding, and Tomato Novel doesn't pay authors by word count. Authors earn from readers and honestly for love. My update volume hasn't changed much, but my income has dropped a lot lately. Anyway, on to the lore. A reader argued that the Amber Lord glancing at the stars is not the same as the Amber Lord striking the anvil, that being glanced at is not equivalent to the transition from Cycle 157 to Cycle 158. At first I bristled. In the CG showing the Amber Lord glancing, he holds a hammer high. Isn't that for striking the anvil? Surely it's not just a dramatic pose, but the reader had a point, and it made me dig deeper. Remember that the crew intended to go to Penacony. They only went to Xianzhou Luofu because Kafka boarded. So the train must have had an invitation to the Penacony Grand Celebration at that time, and the event is held once per Amber Cycle. Invitations are generally assumed to be sent when a new Amber Cycle begins, so the question becomes, was that invitation for Cycle 2157 or Cycle 2158? If it was for 2157, it would be too late since the Trailblazer arrived in Cycle 2158. If it was for 2158, that's stranger. The crew received the invitation while it was still 2157. How did Penacony know Cycle 2158 was coming? It creates a timeline inconsistency. I reviewed the in-game texts and found a breakthrough in the Interastral Peace broadcast on the train. That broadcast only plays after the Trailblazer draws the Flamewrought Lance, and its content explicitly announces the universe's transition from Cycle 2057 to 2158. The voice message was updated 4 times over the story, after the Xianzhou main story, before and after the Penacony main story, and during the Omphalos main story. That proves that when the Trailblazer was on Jarilo V6, the Amber Lord did strike the anvil, and the cycle updated to 2158. However, the first segment of the broadcast reviews the deeds of Cycle 2157 and mentions the Stellaron Hunters' appearance on Luofu as an event in Cycle 2157. That caused confusion. Did the main story remain in 2057 up through Xianzhou Luofu? Reading carefully, the broadcast refers to the Stellaron Hunters delivering the Stellaron to Luofu, an event that logically occurred before the Trailblazer's arrival on Xianzhou. Since the message played while the Trailblazer was still on Jarilo, it confirms that the transition to 2158 happened while they were on Jarilo 6. So that part is consistent. The lingering puzzle is the invitation timeline. Penacony's Cycle 2157 celebration couldn't reasonably have been held so late that it overlapped with 2158, and the usual assumption is that the family sends invitations when a new Amber Cycle begins. Given the contradiction, it seems most likely a scripting mistake in the game text rather than an error by the reader or myself. So in this translation, I won't change that point. In my view, the Amber Lord did strike the anvil when he glanced at the stars, bringing Cycle 2158. After the cycle updated, Penacony's invitations were sent out in batches, I won't try to explain why the train crew received an invitation before arriving at Xianzhou. Sometimes these narrative details are left inconsistent in the source material. Thanks for reading this far. 107. Will it be wow? After sending Edward off, Bai Luan lingered on Belobog for a while, occupying himself with odd little projects. He collected a copy of every wanted poster from the train crew, and he helped Serval, who was having something like an existential crisis after ingesting a flood of new information. To cheer Serval up, Bai Luan put together a few songs and passed them along to the mechanical zealots. The result was, everywhere you went, you could suddenly hear someone crooning in an overexcited, borderline fanatical voice. You said you didn't want to be here. Jump into the dye vat. Okay, then walk straight into the mountains. And a string of similar lines, usually sung by several equally hyped-up friends, clustered together. Their fingers twitched oddly, their heads swayed, and they were so lost in the moment they might as well have been on another planet. That was an extreme case. Most of the time things were more controlled, but it made for some memorable scenes. Bai Luan also took the opportunity to study Belobog's automatons more thoroughly. He refined the data he'd collected into a clean piece of source code and copied it for Clara. He figured it would help with awakening more of Belobog's machines. Once the engine of creation was repaired, it began the work it was meant to do, reshaping Jarilo's landscape, carving out plains more habitable for humans. That wasn't all it could do. The engine also happened to be excellent at dealing with fracture creatures. One moment, a fracture creature would be wandering along oblivious. The next, a shadow would swallow it, and the enormous bulk of the engine of creation would loom overhead, and a fist the size of a mountain would fall. For those creatures, the arrival of the engine felt like salvation, because the next instant they were disintegrated. The memory of being dominated by that iron fist returned to them like a bad dream. Of course, the engine couldn't be used to mop up every low-level monster. Maintenance and energy costs would have drained Belobog dry. Bai Luan only fixed it once. He didn't offer ongoing after-sales service. Belobog's scientists worked day and night to solve technical problems, while the engine continued to improve the surrounding environment. Jarilo slowly got better. That was enough. The train crew's crisis had been resolved, and they now had more tangible hope. It was time for Bai Luan to leave. A dimension door opened behind him. He took one last look at Jarilo's snowy expanse. How long would it be before anyone noticed he was gone? It's not a permanent farewell anyway, he murmured, and didn't bother with goodbyes. The door closed, and he returned to Heita Space Station. The trip to Jarilo was finished, and Bai Luan stretched. It had been a fruitful journey. He'd learned another life-saving trick and acquired useful source code that could be adapted for Beta Star. He'd find time to deliver it later. Heita was still with Ruan Mei, researching the swarm and discussing how to replicate a Stellaron-level organism, so she wasn't coming back anytime soon. She'd even picked up Tingyun on the way and was trying to revive her. All that meant Bai Luan effectively had a long vacation entrance ticket. He sighed with satisfaction. It had been a while since he'd felt so relaxed, so he decided to take a day for himself. First order of business, fix his pocket watch. He'd been putting it off while busy, but now he finally had the time. Despite missing parts from the explosion, it was just a pocket watch, a complicated one, but not impossible. Bai Luan had it fixed in half an hour. Then the watch evolved. Curio, revived pocket watch, the device announced. Revive, my dear watch. Based on the original 7 seconds of stop time, you can now rewind time by 13 seconds. Bai Luan stared at the miraculous little item and grumbled, seriously, has the frequency of getting gold items gone up too much lately? The curio responded with an amused tone. I told you a long time ago, better craftsmanship yields better curio effects. As one of only 80-some geniuses in the universe, you'd think you'd have some appreciation for your own workmanship. Fine, fine. The curio went on. During a rewind, everything around you will play back as if someone pressed a playback button. You had me write a patch earlier, so you yourself won't be affected by the rewind. So, used properly, it's like I stopped time for 20 seconds? Bai Luan asked. You can put it that way, the curio said. But actions taken during the rewind are ultimately meaningless. The damage you cause will be undone when the rewind finishes. All right, I can't use it to permanently kill someone mid-rewind, Bai Luan mused, but I can avoid many fatal attacks. And if I can predict where an enemy will end up after the rewind, I can set traps, leave a bomb there, or hold a knife to someone's throat and finish them the moment the rewind ends. In the eyes of anyone being rewound, he'd be a prophet and a teleporter. A new curio-based nightmare had been born. Satisfied, Bai Luan pocketed the evolved watch. He spent the rest of the day chatting with Inspiration Shroom. The Shroom was supervising Shu and waiting for Beta Star to open to interstellar travel. The plan was to buy a ticket, go to Beta Star, and build a giant mushroom snowman there. Bai Luan could have simply sent Inspiration Shroom through the dimension door, but the Shroom wanted to experience the journey. Bai Luan didn't want it traveling alone, nor did he want Shu to make the trip, so he planned to accompany Inspiration Shroom to Beta Star when the time came. He'd already meant to visit Beta Star to deliver the source code anyway. After that, Bai Luan found a quiet spot on the space station, unfolded a lounge chair, lay back, and opened his phone. He lurked for a while in the detective group that was investigating Yimu's true identity. Under his wise leadership, the group had descended into farce. The latest clue directly contradicted the first one, but somehow built on it. The left brain was refuting the right brain, and the investigation had ground to a halt. It didn't matter. Most people treated the group as a place to gossip and slack off. Even Asta had an alt account in there. Pretty much everyone on the space station, except Heita herself, popped up in that chat. After an unknown amount of time, Bai Luan stretched and put his phone down. He watched the stars outside the station. Soon Peppy would don the custom spacesuit Asta had made and go on a spacewalk. Maybe he should go float out there for a bit too. If he could confirm floating aimlessly in vacuum wouldn't kill him and that he could return at will, it sounded comfortably aimless. His thoughts wandered until his phone buzzed twice. You should have received that game festival invitation, right? Are you going? Bai Luan scratched his head. He hadn't heard from Silver Wolf since he'd deleted her game data after the space station incident. Had she cooled off? Did the game data come back? Eye roll. Don't bring up old wounds. Elio said it was compensation for my loss, told me to find you now. I'll get what I want. Oh, what game festival? Silver Wolf. You don't know? Titanfall 2 won an award. How long has it been since you logged into that account? You said you were developing a new game. Were you lying? Uh-huh. I'm working on it. He gave a half-serious answer and logged into his BL account. An email awaited him. Titanfall 2 had been named Game of the Year for how well it promoted friendly interaction between organic and inorganic life forms, blah blah blah. The award came with a prize, a miniature supercomputer with extremely powerful computing capabilities, sponsored by a mysterious donor who demanded the winner be present to claim it. Given his recent streak of luck with golden items, the idea was tantalizing. If he could get that computer and simulate a tiny universe, then curioize it. A curioized simulated universe would be something else entirely. 108. Start executing the commission. Bai Luan still felt a little reluctant to give up his vacation to attend an award ceremony. It wasn't the travel, he didn't mind moving around, but award shows by nature were time sinks. Going on stage meant dressing up and showing his face. Even though his character model was top tier and he could probably just comb his hair and go up, accepting an award usually required an acceptance speech. He couldn't just stride out in a suit and break into a victory dance mid-speech. Could he? If you're the best game developer, you dance. He scolded the thought away. The mental image had already poisoned him enough. This event wasn't just an awards ceremony either. There would be trailers for new games and playable demos for upcoming titles. The awards were likely later in the program, which meant he'd have to stay a long time. Trying out some local games was fine. Those speeches were the annoying part. If only there were a way to accept the award without actually attending. You just want to eat something good, the system teased. Bai Luan ignored it and scanned the invitation again. One line of small print caught his eye. He could bring one companion. Of course. No wonder Silver Wolf had been so interested. A smile slid across his face. He opened his phone and messaged Heita first, but she declined. That just left Silver Wolf. Maybe he could use that one guest spot to avoid all the boring bits. He sent Silver Wolf a few messages, bargaining in his own lazy way. Want me to take you? Yes. With your skills, sneaking in wouldn't be a problem, right? If I can use the front door, why would I sneak around? Want to go on stage and accept an award for me? Too much trouble, no. Bringing her along wasn't enough, so he upped the offer. After this, new games, Silver Wolf. A pause. Then, deal. When do we leave? Bai Luan checked the location. The festival was being held on a planet named Logos, a planet apparently created specifically for game development, a carnival for game creators. He was intrigued. Networked planets weren't easy to find. He booked the tickets and told Silver Wolf they'd leave in about 12 system hours. Silver Wolf asked if he'd reimburse her travel expenses. Bai Luan teased her, and she hissed back something like, "Who do you think you are, Bai Luan? Don't try to be generous." He grinned. He'd only pranked her a little. Still, he wasn't cheap. He booked both first-class tickets without even glancing at the price and sent them to her. Silver Wolf stared at the message. Who were you, really? Bai Luan's smile deepened. I'm rich, and I'm spending it for fun, he might have said. She grumbled about his ostentation, then accepted. He'd booked the trip to leave in 12 hours so he could enjoy himself and get a good night's sleep. No one was going to ruin his leisurely pace. He spent the next day lounging at the space station, completely unhurried. 16 system hours later, he stepped off the interstellar flight into the reception area and saw Silver Wolf waiting, apparently playing a handheld game without even looking up. Who waits for someone at the terminal and doesn't glance once? She really expected him to walk straight past in the crowd. As he approached, she glanced over, then went back to the game. Wait for me a bit, she said, fingers clacking over the controls. When a victory sound rang out, she slid the console away and looked up. You're finally here, she said. What do you mean, finally? Our flights weren't that far apart. Do you know how much I charge for a commission? Tell me and I'll double it. No questions asked. Silence. Silver Wolf blinked. She'd forgotten the person in front of her had never lacked for money. Then can you double the game reward you're giving me? No, Bai Luan said flatly. Silver Wolf's face fell into a ridiculous little pout. Don't look at me like that, he added. We already agreed on the reward, but you go on stage to accept the award for me, make the speech, in short, handle all the annoying stuff. You don't even know how many annoying things that will be, she said. He nodded. That's right, she sighed. I feel like I'm getting a raw deal. No matter how painful now, it'll be worth it when the new game launches, he said with a bright grin. She hesitated. If I handle everything, aren't you afraid people will think I'm the actual developer? I don't care, Bai Luan shrugged. Her expression flickered. Regret, then acceptance. Is your Stellaron Hunter's wanted status going to make it inconvenient to show your face? A small problem. I'll handle it. See, that's what I call professionalism. Bai Luan couldn't help praising her. All right, I'll leave it to you. If anything comes up you can't handle, contact me. What will you be doing? Trying out the upcoming games, of course. He smiled like a child. Silver Wolf wasn't nearly as excited as she should have been. Taking money and fixing other people's problems was her kind of work, but she'd been hoping to be the one playing the new titles. She comforted herself with the thought that the easy cash would buy plenty of game time later. By the time she blinked back into focus, Bai Luan was already walking away. He wasted not a second. Employers were all like that. Time to execute the commission. 109. Genshin Impact. Launch. He trusted Silver Wolf to take care of things. After dumping all the trouble on her, Bai Luan planned to enjoy himself on the planet Logos, a world built around games. Everything here was drenched in game elements. He couldn't possibly explore the whole planet in a few days, so he decided to limit himself to the city hosting the award ceremony. If they could stage such a grand event, attract someone like Silver Wolf, and invite his game account, there had to be something special about it. Staying in the city would also be a sensible precaution against any unexpected situation. Transportation on Logos was entertaining. A a network of teleportation points, each designed with a different game aesthetic. Some were ringed in magical runes, with an ethereal blue glow flowing among the inscriptions. Others were rainbow metal hoops of precise machinery, gears meshing with a futuristic rhythm. They all worked on the same principle, but their elaborate presentations kept fans immersed. One teleportation point looked like a cave. The entrance glowed soft white, as if leading to a forgotten fantasy. Bai Luan laughed to himself. The scene begged for a caption in his head. Press any key to start the game. He stepped into the light curtain, his vision filled with milky white. Then two familiar words appeared as if they'd always been waiting there. Genshin Impact. Even the startup tune, painfully familiar, played in his ears. Of course it was the system. Its sudden meme reference broke his composure. He couldn't quite hold back a laugh. "You've really gone off topic, haven't you?" he muttered. From the system came its usual cheerful, slightly exasperated voice. "You must be wary of anything that glows white, because I will, anytime, anywhere. Genshin Impact. Launching." Bai Luan snorted. "You're on vacation with your references." The system sounded almost despairing. Bai Luan couldn't help pitying its poor state of mind for a second. When the white light cleared, he was standing in the city square where the award ceremony would be held. This was no ordinary developed city. Holographic heroes fought between buildings, giant game posters covered entire glass facades, snatches of dialogue from unknown titles braided through the air. Medieval castles sat beside cyberpunk spires, Cthulhu-style tentacles dangled off anime cafes, and post-apocalyptic armored vehicles were parked under streets strewn with cherry blossoms, like countless game worlds had overlapped in a dimensional accident. Bai Luan stood in the center of the square, grinning. Every corner told a different story. "This is exactly what I wanted to see," he told himself. Shops here covered the whole spectrum of game aesthetics. Magical medieval boutiques, futuristic tech stalls, horror shops dripping Cthulhu motifs, cute anime cafes, post-apocalyptic vendors, and bucolic pastoral stands. Games from across the universe had branches here. After exiting the teleportation point, he was handed a wristband, a tourist guide for Logos. Once worn, it would identify characters or scenes he didn't recognize. The band scanned and searched its database, projecting the results to his retina. It also contained a city map and could plan routes to anywhere he wished to go. Extremely useful, and best of all, free. Visitors could take the wristbands off-planet as souvenirs, but to keep full functionality outside Logos required downloading an offline data pack for a price. Of course, there were a host of optional service packs as well. The free stuff was always the most expensive in disguise, but who could refuse such a practical device? With it, even someone who'd never played a game could pretend to be a veteran. It made diving straight into what interested him effortless, and it was great for checking background lore, truly excellent value. Engraved on the side of the wristband was a small line of text. "The sole and ultimate purpose of games is to bring joy. They are never high or low, noble or humble. If they can bring happiness, they possess full value." Hyperion, presumably the founder of Logos. To build a gaming utopia like this, he had to be someone extraordinary. Bai Luan wished he'd get the chance to meet him someday, but for now, he wasn't in a hurry to use the wristband. He decided to wander. The best plan for relaxation was no plan at all. As he strolled, he noticed an interesting phenomenon. Despite the Honkai, Star Rail Universe's advanced tech, and an omnipresent intergalactic network, many shops still centered on primitive input methods, keyboards and mice. Nostalgia played a part, but the main customers were planets with less developed technology, some not unlike the blue star in Bai Luan's memory. It made sense. The universe held infinite possibilities. Alongside civilizations with top-tier tech were worlds still in their infancy. Entities like the Company might work to upgrade low-tech planets, but their services cost money. Some regions simply couldn't afford them yet and stuck to familiar older methods. That created a massive diverse market. As long as a game's quality was solid, it would find an appreciative audience regardless of style or technological level. No wonder Logos existed. It was a carnival woven from countless players and developers across the stars, an inclusive place where any game could find kindred spirits. The universe's breadth and tolerance were the soil that let a miracle like Logos grow, a never-ending celebration spun together by variety and passion. Because of the wide variety of playstyles and the game's deliberate cross-compatibility, Bai Luan had seen some astonishing things. People would bring their custom keyboards and mice, plug them into the terminals at the arcade, and play side by side with enthusiasts using entirely different setups. Some keyboard and mouse veterans could even go toe-to-toe with players in full VR, true PvP masters. Bai Luan wandered through the Honkai Star Rail world, sampling local games. Many titles here didn't just run, they reconstructed entire worlds. Keyboard and mouse controls felt familiar to him, but once you slipped on a VR headset, you were dropped into a wholly different reality. The immersion multiplied. The VR experiences came in tiers. The higher the tier, the closer to reality, and the higher the price. Some fighting sims were so realistic that years of play could teach you legitimate techniques. Racing and mech games were more extreme. Some rigs were full-scale cockpits. Sparks flew and deafening roars filled the air when metal blades of mechs clashed. Seats shoved you back when thrusters kicked in. Every tilt and vibration was fed back precisely into the cockpit. Bai Luan fought 2 intense matches and came out buzzing, as if a big part of his life had just been fulfilled. "I'm actually piloted a Gundam now," he said with a long breath, grinning. One word summed it up: awesome. After sampling the local offerings, he checked his own game list through his bracelet. He asked it about Minecraft. The bracelet plotted a route to the nearest teleport point for the Minecraft area. When he arrived, he couldn't help smiling. The portal frame was built of obsidian, and a wooden chest sat beside it. The frame was inert. He opened the chest and, as expected, found a flint and steel. He struck it, sparked the void inside the frame, and a shimmering purple curtain unfurled, scattering stardust-like particles. "This portal even has particle effects," he murmured. He stepped onto the portal. It didn't yank him through immediately. It paused for a heartbeat before teleporting him. Every detail here had been thought through. On the other side, he heard a muffled humph and watched a blocky villager amble past, exactly like in the game. When the villager shuffled away and Bai Luan could see the scene clearly, he couldn't help but whisper, "Holy crap." The whole area had been rebuilt in Minecraft's pixelated style. Grass blocks, square cows and sheep, tiny blocky flowers swaying in a simplified wind, everything faithfully recreated. He raised a hand instinctively. It looked normal at first, and he almost wondered whether he'd actually transmigrated into the game. A prompt appeared in his vision. User detected entering a special stylized area. Enable cognitive filter? He selected yes. Instantly, his hands in the HUD became the familiar blocky ones. An inventory interface materialized out of thin air with health, hunger, and experience bars, and a full set of backpack slots. What was the difference between this and remaking Minecraft in real life? In the reception, they didn't allow breaking blocks, but there were areas where creation and destruction were free. He walked to one of those and swung at a grass block. He actually broke it. The visuals weren't the only thing faithfully reproduced. Unique rules like block drops, item pickup, and stacking behaved exactly as they should. Bai Luan admired the amount of work gone into it. Whoever designed this area deserved a salute from any Minecraft fan. Everywhere he looked, there were expert players. Bed Wars pros pulling off slick PvP moves, speed builders constructing magnificent structures in record time, and mind-boggling redstone contraptions. He stood gaping at an iron golem being forced into continuous piston-driven motion by a clever redstone circuit. Players around the world really did think in similar ways sometimes. Satisfied by the Minecraft area, Bai Luan set his sights on Titanfall 2 next. The teleportation led him to a 1-to-1 replica of a Vanguard-class Titan, BT-7274, with an opening cockpit. The Titan half-crouched, extended a mechanical palm, and let him climb into a perfectly replicated pilot chair. Inside, you could truly pilot it and even talk to the built-in BT AI. The simulated BT tossed quips and commands back and forth, just like in the game, and the banter made the experience even more alive. He played 3 rounds and stepped down grinning. No wonder Silver Wolf had recommended this place. Anyone would dream of coming here. Bai Luan acknowledged Silver Wolf's taste. This environment could easily kill years without getting boring. He felt a pang of regret as well. If he'd put more work into porting over titles from his previous life, maybe he'd be the one making people light up like this. If he'd recreated Black Myth Wukong, would he be storming the heavenly court as the Monkey King? Then he remembered how much the original relied on Journey to the West lore. Bringing Black Myth over properly would be a lot of work. He pushed the thought aside. He was on vacation and didn't want to think about work. After so much intense play, he wanted something more relaxing. He entered his preferences into his bracelet. The bracelet matched him with suitable options and plotted a route. As he walked, he saw what the bracelet had selected: a game that scanned the player's memories and, through lucid sleep simulation, fulfilled their heart's regrets and fantasies. Poor people could prosper in dreams, the paralyzed could stand up, the impossible could be experienced. Artificial lucid dreaming. He hesitated. The game would scan memories. Would it expose the truth of his transmigration? He joked with a companion in voice chat. "You can play with confidence. I'll be watching. If I mess up this minigame, my mentor will probably flay me." "Are you sure you want to bet a layer of skin?" the companion teased. "Don't question me. Go play. I'm watching. What could go wrong?" "Fine. Go have fun in your dream." Bai Luan settled into the game pod with a little anticipation. He put on the helmet and let it take him under. In the simulation, he woke up on a bed and sat up, scanning his surroundings. He was back in the shabby rental from his previous life. This isn't a good memory, he thought. He stood and looked into a cracked mirror. His face was the optimized, handsomer version the system provided. He felt a flicker of disappointment. He had hoped for something grander: cured illness, a lottery win, a triumphant life. The phone on the table vibrated. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, and then froze. "Mom, 111. There's no going back." The message on his phone was simple, just a few lines. "When are you coming back to visit? Mom misses you." For those 2 lines, Bai Luan had come home. His hometown lay far from the city that held his work and his solitude. He had to change from subway to high-speed train to bus, and then walk along a stretch of dusty country road before the silhouette of the old house appeared. The round trip took nearly a full day. On the way, he thought about many things, mostly a heavy anxiety, a kind of trepidation before returning. In his true memory, his parents' faces had long since blurred after that terrible car accident years ago. Even the outlines of them had faded, leaving only a warm, unreachable halo. What would he say when he saw her? Would it feel unfamiliar, awkward? If his mother was here in this dream, then what about Grandpa and Grandma? Would they be here too? As his thoughts tangled, the old house gradually became clear. But it wasn't the decaying, lonely place his memories always showed. There were no cobwebs on the eaves, no damp, musty smell. Warm light glowed from the windows. Someone was home. Someone had made this house a home. Bai Luan walked up the path and knocked on his own door. "Who is it?" came a voice from inside, so familiar and yet somehow strange, like a soft needle that prickled his heart. "It's me." He only realized his voice was trembling after he spoke. "You're back? Why didn't you say something?" There was surprise in the voice, then hurried footsteps. The door opened. When he saw his mother, all the vague contours in his memory snapped into focus. The face before him matched the blurred halo of the past, marked by time, lined with age, but smiling warmly. So this was what Mom looked like when she grew old. Hot tears stung his eyes, but Bai Luan smiled and squinted, hiding sorrow behind the smile. "Hey, Mom, I'm back. Come in, come in. You haven't eaten yet, have you? I'll make you something to eat." He stepped inside. In this dream, he didn't have cancer. His savings hadn't been drained by hospital bills, but used on other things. Even though it was a rural house, it had been renovated nicely and had internet. His mother went straight to the kitchen. In the living room, his father was watching TV. He turned, saw Bai Luan, and smiled. "You're back?" Bai Luan stared at him a moment, then returned the smile. "Yes, I'm back. I caught a big fish today. Wait until your mother's fish soup. It's going to be delicious." He asked, a little nervously. "Grandpa and Grandma, where are they?" "Oh, they left early this morning to sell the vegetables they grew. They don't make much, and they won't listen when we tell them to rest, so we let them be." Relief eased something tight in Bai Luan's chest. At least, in this dream, his grandparents were alive and well. He sat on the sofa while his mother bustled in the kitchen, and his father murmured beside him. A long-lost, indescribable calm wrapped around him. It was the purest kind of relaxation, the belonging that comes when both parents are there and the lights are warm. How happy that felt. He thought, suddenly understanding how precious this dream was. To taste this again was a huge surprise. A little girl, 5 or 6, delicate as carved jade, suddenly ran out of the house. Seeing Bai Luan on the sofa, her eyes lit up and she dashed toward him. "Brother, hug!" He was stunned, then instinctively opened his arms and hugged the child racing toward him. "Brother, you're back?" He had no memory of this little girl in his previous life, but the brightness in her eyes and the unabashed affection made him realize immediately. She was his sister. Joy rose in him at the thought. "Yes, brother's back. Xiao Luaner, your brother just came home. Let him rest a bit. I'll just sit next to brother. I won't bother." She ignored her father's protest and settled beside him, turning to watch TV. Bai Luan set his phone aside. What was on it compared to this? Even if the TV only had commercials, he would watch them. His mother brought out a small bowl of fish soup, just a little something to warm his stomach. When his sister learned he hadn't eaten, she ran off to her room and returned with snacks to share. Time flowed quietly. The little bowl was finished. His grandparents came back not long after. Grandma, seeing him, brightened then frowned at how thin he looked and insisted he needed to eat more. She and his mother went into the kitchen and started making a big meal. Grandpa didn't say much. He called Bai Luan over and pressed some money into his hand. It was only a few dozen yuan, but holding it made him happier than payday, despite his real salary being over 200 times that amount. The family gathered at the table. Though Bai Luan had learned to eat food from strange places, this dinner tasted right. It matched the way he remembered which dishes were saltier, which blander. Love was the secret seasoning. Just a little made everything delicious. After dinner, his father and grandfather chatted. His mother and grandmother washed dishes. He wanted to help, but was gently shooed away. His sister came over with her homework and tugged his sleeve. Could he teach her? Of course he could. He helped her finish her homework, explaining patiently. When everything was done, Bai Luan sat on the sofa a while longer, then stood. It was time to leave. This was only a beautiful dream. A taste was enough. Staying longer would only make the pain worse. He took one last look at the home. "Mom? Yes? What is it?" "I'm going for a walk to digest." "Okay, come back early. There are a lot of mosquitoes outside." "Okay." He walked to the door and felt the cold metal of the doorknob under his palm. Behind him were all the things he had longed for and never found in his past and present lives. A deep hesitation, like a vine, coiled around his heart and nearly pulled him back. In the end, he turned the handle and opened the door that meant parting and waking. "Grandpa, Grandma, Dad, Mom, little sister, goodbye." The wooden door closed behind him with a soft sigh. He wandered without direction and found himself, without realizing it, in front of a familiar wasteland. He remembered this place. They were buried here. If only all of this were real, if only he weren't so painfully conscious that it was a dream, how wonderful it would be. After everything he'd been through, he'd thought his desires might have changed. They hadn't. What he wanted most was still these simple things. A trace of melancholy passed across his face. "I knew you had something on your mind." His mother's voice came from beside him. "Mom, why are you here? My child is unhappy. I always need to know why, right?" She smiled and came closer. "Tell me, why are you unhappy? Did someone bully you? Are you sick? Your job pays well, but it's tiring and stressful. If it's too much, come home for a while. Your father and I are still here." "Mom." Bai Luan looked at her and tried to shape his mouth into a reassuring smile, but it turned out only a sad outline. He said softly, half a sigh, half a farewell, "Neither you nor I can go back." 112. "But Mom really loves you." "Didn't you come back? What do you mean you can't go back?" His mother's puzzled voice drifted through the house. Bai Luan knew this would be hard for her to understand. The easiest thing would be to leave, but what would she think if she learned the truth about this world? If she knew he was just a character reconstructed from someone's memories of a game, she would be hurt, wouldn't she? He hesitated. Then his mother smiled and said, soft but sure, "You can't fool your mom. I can tell. Tell Mom the truth." If I tell you the truth, Mom, you might not believe me. Bai Luan managed a self-deprecating smile, but he decided to tell her anyway. She'd said he couldn't fool her, he couldn't hide from her. He slowly explained everything, the true reality outside, and how this world had been built from memories. It didn't take long. His mother listened quietly, then looked at him with eyes rimmed in sorrow. "So we abandoned you that early?" she whispered. Bai Luan shook his head. "That's not your fault." She was silent for a long time. He worried she still blamed herself and tried to comfort her. "It's okay, Mom. It's all in the past. I'm doing fine now." She lifted her head and looked at him. "Maybe Mom is fake, but Mom truly loves you." Bai Luan froze. Words failed him and tears rose before he could speak. Of course, he'd always had family who loved him. His mother stepped forward and wrapped him in a gentle embrace, her hand smoothing his hair as if calming a child who had lost everything years ago and never been allowed to grieve properly. "It's okay to cry," she murmured. "It's okay to cry." Bai Luan hadn't cried like that in a long time. After his family had left, he'd learned that crying changed nothing. But this time, held, understood, he let it out. After an unknown while, his emotions settled. The cry had clarified something for him about this world. Leaving immediately would be nothing but escape. What if it was possible to return? Even if this world was artificial, it could still be a beautiful memory he could visit. They were alive in that memory. Thinking of them would bring them back to life again. Once he saw it that way, a weight lifted. He smiled, no longer in a rush to flee. Even if it was all a dream, he would say a proper goodbye. "After all, even if you are merely data, Mom," she had said, "I still love you." Seeing his smile, his mother relaxed. "You said you're doing well. Tell Mom how well." "Okay, Mom. You don't know, after I went to the Honkai Star Rail world." Bai Luan launched into everything he'd done since entering the game world, telling her about his experiences. She listened with a smile, then asked casually, "Do you have a girlfriend you like?" Bai Luan choked mid-sentence. He coughed, scratched his head awkwardly, and admitted, "Yes, Mom." "That's something, actually making you open up." "Oh, Mom, I'm human. I must have one or two flaws, right?" His mother didn't snap back. She only smiled and asked, "Do you have a photo?" A photo. That was a problem. He had pictures of Heita, but his dream version didn't. On his phone was nothing but the Honkai Star Rail game. He couldn't just open the game and point to Heita and say, "That's her." Not when his mother couldn't possibly grasp transmigration or the whole mess. She'd think he was still the same as before, infatuated with pretty characters in a game. Seeing him stuck, his mother stopped pressing for a photo and asked instead, "Do you truly like her?" Bai Luan nodded seriously. Treat her well. And if you have children someday, don't leave her to raise them alone." His mother rambled gently, passing on the old generation's counsel. Perhaps it was outdated, but it didn't matter. He would listen and keep it in his heart. "It's a pity I can't meet her," she said, wistfully. "System, it is not impossible." Bai Luan blinked. A crack split open beside him, and Heita stepped through. She glanced around, irritated and curious. "Where is this? It doesn't look like the little black room. Where have you been now?" For a moment, Bai Luan was stunned. Then he laughed. Really laughed. Relief and joy bubbled out of him. "Thank you, System. This is a perfect dream. Why leave regrets?" He introduced Heita to his mother. "Mom, this is the person I love." Heita quickly understood from that sentence and decided to play along. "Nice to meet you, Auntie. I'm Heita, Bai Luan's partner." She paused, glanced at Bai Luan, then added with a smile, "And companion." That one line won his mother over. They began to chat, and soon his mother was teasingly recounting his embarrassing childhood stories, exactly what Bai Luan had expected. He might have been embarrassed, but this was part of meeting a family. Since he'd chosen to say a proper goodbye before leaving, he took Heita back to the house. Heita, with her genius society poise, charmed them all effortlessly. By the end of the evening, the whole family had warmed to her. His father joked and patted Bai Luan, praising him for finding a girlfriend as pretty as his mother had once been, only to be scolded by her for saying it. The next morning, Bai Luan and Heita bid his family farewell. Everyone except his mother assumed he was simply returning to the city. Bai Luan took one last, long look. This time, it was truly goodbye. "I will never, ever forget you." Even though there were no regrets left, his eyes filled with warm tears. He thought, at least Let me cry after I turn away. Herta took his hand, warm, steady, without any extra expression, only a faint smile for him. Let's go, she said. Let's go. Hand in hand, they walked out of the old house that held his brief, beautiful dream. His mother stood in the doorway watching them go, her face peaceful and relieved to see her child truly happy. She said nothing more, only a tranquil smile curved her lips. When Bai Luan awoke from the game pod, he didn't leave right away. He lingered, savoring the dream. It had been beautiful. Is there a timeline where I can live that happily? He asked himself. Yes, there is. He exhaled softly and smiled. That's wonderful. He rose from the pod and looked at it one last time, but I won't let the me now lose to him either. P.S. A reader has created a group. Interested parties can check it out. QQ Group 1, 1572749 full. QQ Group 2, 87273731. You can join this one. Thank you all for your support. Due to the large number of people and the management pressure, we are temporarily not recruiting more members. Thank you for your understanding. 2 identical notifications blinked on Bai Luan's game bracelet. 113. I just want to urge you to update more. Twice. He smiled and looked at the game's creator with curiosity. If he ever had the chance, he would definitely pay the man a visit. He felt obliged to thank him for making such a wonderful gaming experience and maybe invest heavily in this planet. The bracelet showed the designer's name, Hyperion. The founder of the planet was also an excellent game developer. Bai Luan resolved to go on a spending spree here. His phone vibrated twice. Silver Wolf, it's finally over. That fast? Silver Wolf nearly spat when Bai Luan brushed it off. She had spent 2 or 3 days preparing everything, grinding through the commission until she could barely move, and then he gave that line. It was infuriating. She wanted to fly over and punch him, but professionalism won out. A big shot wants to meet you. He wants to give you a prize. If you want it, you have to come in person. I can't go instead. Who insists on seeing me? He said his name is Hyperion. Seems like fate is at work again. You know him? Don't you know he's the founder of this planet? No, I just know it's fun here. Give me the coordinates. Silver Wolf, come quickly. Bai Luan ran to the coordinates. From a distance, he spotted Silver Wolf waiting outside the private room. She looked haggard compared to the last time, like a student forced to cram long after school let out. When she saw him, she waved. Over here. Bai Luan approached. Is it all over? It's all over. Silver Wolf handed him a trophy, and Bai Luan took it casually. She nodded in satisfaction. With this, the commission is done. I'm going to play now. You can take your time chatting with him. She planted her hands on her hips and warned him, sharp as ever, you'd better get the game out quickly. If it's not fun, you'll see. Don't worry, everything will be there. Satisfied with his answer, Silver Wolf left like a wound finally healed, eager to make up for the time she'd sacrificed. Bai Luan put the trophy away and stepped into the private room. Time to meet this legendary developer. An old man sat by a window, white hair, advanced in years, but with a strong look in his eyes. He wore a well-cut suit and sat in a wheelchair. He glanced up at the sound of footsteps, hesitation in his face as he spoke. BL. He sounded uncertain. Bai Luan looked ridiculously young. Bai Luan nodded. It's me. To prove it, he logged into his account and brought up the back end for BL. Hyperion's face lit up. I've finally waited for you. So excited, he rose from his wheelchair and walked over to shake Bai Luan's hand. Bai Luan froze. Wait, you can walk? Hyperion laughed merrily. No one said a mobility aid couldn't look like a wheelchair, did they? I think it's cool. The old developer had a flair for the unconventional. I've finally met you. Another childhood dream come true. Bai Luan smiled, but the tone made him uneasy. Do you have some incurable disease? I know a bit about healing. Maybe I can help. He was already reaching for his extraction gun, but Hyperion waved him off. I'm not sick. Sounds like something an old man on his deathbed would say, but I really am fine. He settled back into his wheelchair with a grin. I just thought of this and went to do it. Just like I wanted to establish Logos. I wanted to, so I did. That's incredible, Bai Luan said. I've played here a long time. It's a gamer's utopia. Hyperion's eyes brightened. He snapped his fingers, and the walls of the private room illuminated, revealing built-in display cases, models, figurines, game cartridges, classic consoles, an entire miniature museum of gaming artifacts. Bai Luan felt like he stood before a treasure hoard. "I loved games from a young age," Hyperion said, pleased with Bai Luan's reaction. He fell into reminiscence. "I was always amazed by the ingenuity of game designers, and I loved hunting for the Easter eggs they hid everywhere. When the achievement all collected prompt popped up, it felt like I'd completed a gaze across a screen with the creator behind it. We'd never met, but it felt like old friends." He looked at Bai Luan, warm. "The first to make me feel that was your game, BL. "Because they're very fun?" Bai Luan guessed. "No," Hyperion said unexpectedly. "Because they were cheap." Bai Luan paused, then burst out laughing, and Hyperion laughed with him. When their laughter died down, Hyperion grew serious. "But they're truly fun. Even now I'll pick one of your games, spend an entire afternoon, and re-experience that pure joy of youth. That's what a good game should do. No matter how flashy or simple the surface, the core must be an incredibly interesting experience." He leaned in with conviction. "That's also why I stubbornly kept the primitive keyboard and mouse option in Logos. There are always people who can't afford top-tier gear, but their love for games is no less real. I wanted to preserve an entry point for them." "I've played your game," Bai Luan said sincerely. "It's truly great." Hyperion smiled. "Thank you for playing my game, and thank you for yours. It led me down the path of game design." "You mean I had a part in that?" "Of course. My first pot of gold came from making a modified version of your game." He smiled, nostalgia flickering across his face. "Back then, so many people told me all I knew was playing games, that researching this was worthless, that I couldn't earn a living. I listened, reflected, and realized one thing." "What?" "Don't listen to them. Live freely." His sudden remark made Bai Luan laugh again. Hyperion joined him with a genial smile. "One must live by their passion, not the eyes of others." "Right." Bai Luan tried to rein in his grin and spoke earnestly. "What you love is your life." "All right, enough chatter. Let's give you your prize." Hyperion's armrest slid open to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside sat a miniature computer with a faint blue glow. He took it out and handed it to Bai Luan. "Curio, miniature supercomputer. Smallest size, most overpowered computing power." Bai Luan accepted it. It had been a long time since he'd seen a curio he hadn't made himself. "Thank you for the prize. I hope this helps you make more great games." Hyperion's tone mixed jest with a sincere request. "Before I die, can you make a few more games?" Bai Luan choked on the solemn phrasing. "If you really have some hidden illness, I can cure it." "No, I'm not sick. I'm very healthy." Hyperion leaned back with the grin of a mischievous child. "I just want to rush you to update." Bai Luan had donated a hefty sum to Logos for use in building the game areas he was bringing to the planet. Hyperion refused to accept the money outright and instead decided to erect a statue of Bai Luan somewhere in Logos. Bai Luan asked if the statue could do a backflip. Hyperion sounded a little confused, but promised to try his best. Chats with Hyperion were always pleasant. Even the update nagging was pleasant. Logos was a wonderful planet. In the last few days, Bai Luan had had a blast. He'd come for the computer, but Logos might be worth an entire trip of its own. If he had free time later, he would come back to play. He took out his phone and messaged Silver Wolf. "I'm leaving first. What are your plans?" "I haven't had enough fun yet. I haven't even started playing." "All right. I won't book your return ticket this time." He casually transferred a sum of money to her account, figuring it would cover travel expenses. "Sylv, why so much? Is it a lot?" "I just punched a random number into the transfer. The extra is a tip. No matter who you are, don't get off on the wrong foot with me." "Why would you sooner believe I'm possessed than that I'm just being generous?" "Tell that to my deleted game account and my dead partner, Vanguard Class Titan BT-7274. Seriously, you act like this after one heartbreak. After Cyberpunk 2077 is fully released, I have to make you watch Edgerunners. I'll live for your reaction." Just picturing Silver Wolf's expression after Edgerunners gave Bai Luan a burst of motivation. But that could wait. He had a more urgent task. He popped open the Anywhere door, returned to Herta space station, and unpacked the miniature supercomputer. Herta was away for a while. He needed to use the lab to finish the miniature simulated universe before she came back. If she found out he was building a simulated universe on the station, she'd assume he'd become obsessed and wouldn't stop, and she'd start dragging him into making DLC after DLC. That prospect terrified him. There was another reason to build it. The so-called Genius Society was really just erudition's hit list. Kakamu could turn up and elbow him at any time. Better to have countermeasures ready. Bai Luan burrowed into the lab and started tinkering. The universe he was constructing was only intended as a computational model for planning how to deal with erudition, so resource use wouldn't be outrageous. Most of the software he needed already existed. He only had to streamline and adapt it. For a lot of the work, he relied on Curios. This was the first time he'd used pure Curios to build something, and he half wondered what the finished contraption would be like. 15 days flew by. He had 2 pieces of good news and 1 bad. Good. The miniature simulated universe was almost finished. Good. Herta was scheduled to return soon. Bad. Herta was scheduled to return soon. Once she was back, he couldn't brazenly use the station lab, and worse, she would probably yank him into making simulated universe DLCs that would drain his time. And the project was stuck at 99%. He couldn't finish it, and the itch to complete it felt like something scratching at his heart. He needed time. 1 more day would be enough. So when Herta finally returned and asked, "What reward do you want?" he hesitated, then asked for the one thing he thought would buy him the time he needed. "Miss Herta," he began carefully, "would you grant me 1 day to refuse you?" Herta blinked. What a strange request. As the saying goes, he explained, true freedom is not doing whatever you want, but not doing whatever you don't want. That's a twisted way to put it, she said, sounding amused. Bai Luan didn't care about the image damage. He nodded. I have a twisted sense of humor. Herta shrugged. All right then. It was only 1 day. How much harm could it do? For half a day, Herta tried to stick to the plan, but a severe unease gnawed at her. Since returning to the station, everything had felt slightly off. She had a constant, low-level feeling that someone should be standing beside her, someone who normally would be there. When Bai Luan was absent entirely, the feeling wasn't as strong. But now he was somewhere on the station, and she couldn't call him. The discomfort grew loud and insistent. She told herself she didn't really need an assistant, but the doubt kept returning. Meanwhile, Bai Luan felt like he was racing against a ticking bomb. Working in a high-stakes rush was new to him. He'd never felt this urgency even during his college entrance exams. Anytime he passed the doorway, he half expected Herta to storm in and say, Aha, you've been secretly developing a simulated universe behind my back. If you love simulated universes so much, then come make Swarm Disaster, Gold and Gears, and the Unknown Regions. And pull him into an endless cycle of DLC production. He pushed himself harder, hands moving faster, every nerve alert. After more than half a day of intense work, the main body of the miniature simulated universe was finally finished. It looked like a delicate necklace now. The carrier was ready. All that remained was to load the program. Then the lab door opened. Bai Luan nearly dropped the necklace. He snatched it, hiding it behind his back, heart pounding. He forced calm into his voice, though guilt showed on his face as he looked toward the doorway. It was Herta. Miss Herta? His voice trembled a little. Is something the matter? She walked in with an expression that mixed irritation and something softer, something like exasperated affection. Change your reward, she said. Bai Luan froze, confused. Herta had lost the contest she'd set for herself. 115. What does this have to do with anything? Bai Luan had subconsciously agreed to Herta's request to change the reward, even though he still didn't understand why she had asked. Changing the reward wasn't a big deal. It only meant that he would be transferred from a random lab on the space station to Herta's office. It didn't affect the data input. He had to be here anyway. All he needed was an opportunity, while Herta wasn't looking to copy a set of erudition's data from the simulated universe and transfer it into the miniature simulated universe. He glanced at Herta, confirmed she was fully absorbed in the simulated universe display, and prepared to open a back door. The moment his hand rose, Herta looked up at him. His hand froze. He glanced guiltily toward the simulation bay. Herta, meanwhile, was thinking about something else entirely. Seeing Bai Luan just standing there doing nothing felt right. It occurred to her that her feelings for this assistant might not be only amusement. As a genius, she quickly analyzed the situation. What should she do with him? There were two choices: let him go or bind him tightly to her side. Which was better? Her gaze lingered on him. He looked oddly guilty and even avoided meeting her eyes. Was he hiding something? The request to change the reward had already struck her as odd. Combined with everything else she'd observed, a thread of memory tugged at her. The invitation she'd once declined. Maybe she shouldn't have. If Bai Luan hadn't gone with her to Logos, then who had he gone with? Had someone else taken the chance to recruit him? Was that why he'd been acting strange? Her eyes sharpened. Bai Luan, who'd been peering into the simulated universe, felt a sudden chill. He realized it came from Herta. His heart skipped. Had she discovered he was secretly creating a miniature simulated universe? Even if she had, would she be angry? It wasn't that outrageous, was it? Are you in a relationship? Herta asked. Huh? The question hit Bai Luan like a cold shower. He blinked, then decided honesty was the simplest route. If you mean that, I've been feeling something lately. The chill from Herta intensified. Bai Luan's mind scrambled. What had he done wrong this time? Who? She pressed. Suddenly, it felt like a storm around him. Bai Luan hesitated. Had Herta reached a milestone in some invisible progress bar? Was this the time to confess? The atmosphere felt wrong, but he forced himself to point at her. That simple gesture made the snowstorm halt. Herta's confusion flipped to surprise. You like me? Shame rose hot in Bai Luan's face, but he nodded. You didn't go to Logos with me? Herta asked, curious. Bai Luan scratched his head, his brain threatening to overheat. He had the odd sense she'd been cross-referencing him with some other thread of information. What exactly is going on? You answer me first. Who did you go to Logos with? Silver Wolf. And what did you go with her to do? Because I asked you and you wouldn't go. If I wouldn't go, you'd take her? Herta's voice was sharp as she tried to map his movements. There was something I wanted from Logos. Getting it was a bit of a hassle. I needed Silver Wolf to be a tool to help me avoid trouble. Just for that? Her eyes searched him. Otherwise? Bai Luan answered plainly, no shame in his tone. Using someone as a tool for a task he didn't want to do felt perfectly normal to him. If you want, I can show the transfer records and chat logs. He invoked impeccable, and it worked. Herta's expression shifted. She believed him. Then what have you been feeling guilty about? She asked. Bai Luan could have tried another dodge, but he had already committed. Well, I had some strange little thoughts in my heart. He meant what he just confessed, feelings for her. Herta was silent for a moment, then laughed. Very good. I like that answer. She understood now. If she wasn't incapable of keeping him, why would she let him go? But should she formally acknowledge their relationship immediately, or keep the status quo and enjoy teasing him a while longer? Watching the blush and shame on his face, the corner of her mouth curved. Keeping things as they were would be more entertaining for a time. Bai Luan let out a long breath. Whatever invisible hurdle he'd just surmounted, it felt like a victory, even though he couldn't say why the hurdle had existed in the first place. He'd saved the miniature simulated universe for now and hadn't been marched off to help Herta make a new DLC, or so he hoped. He still needed to find a safe way to get the simulated universe program. By the way, Herta said casually, we're preparing a new simulated universe DLC, Swarm Disaster. Get ready. Bai Luan turned to her, stunned. He'd just navigated whatever crisis had been between them. How did this immediately turn into another demand? Eh? Why that look? Herta observed. Didn't you already copy the simulation program yourself? How did you know? His voice had a trace of forced cheer. She smiled. A glance is enough. It seems I've been underestimating you. He'd been seen through in a single look. All his desperate stealth earlier felt suddenly foolish. The light in his eyes dulled. The thought blinked across his mind like a caption. The calculating gambler, exhausted, ultimately loses everything. Damn the system. This time, the idea for the Swarm Disaster DLC came from the living swarm samples you found, Herta explained. While studying them, Ruan Mei and I discussed possibilities. The simulated universe was originally created to study the aeons, recreating important moments involving the aeons in the simulation and observing reactions is a research method. So if I hadn't gone to Tantalus, you wouldn't have thought of the Swarm Disaster DLC yet? He tried to make his tone light. Heita nodded. You could say that. Your trip brought us several interesting projects. Fantastic, Bai Luan thought bitterly. All the useful things he'd done on his excursions had just turned into more work for himself. He imagined the metaphorical slapstick of dancing on a stair and had to laugh at the absurdity. Still, when he pictured it, he couldn't help smiling. If this had to be done, he might as well do it well. Then let's start developing the DLC, he said, resolve settling in. 116. Laugh out loud spells. Developing the simulated universe DLC hadn't been pleasant, but somehow Bai Luan found this round much easier than the last. The hardest part, building the simulated universe from scratch, was already done. This time, it was mostly adding features to existing tech, and there was also the advantage of data from the swarm. All told, the workload felt far lighter. During development, Ruan Mei came by. Heita had agreed to give her a section of the space station to experiment in. Ruan Mei wanted to tinker with creating an Aeon emissary of propagation, but the area Heita assigned wasn't ready for immediate use, so the modification plans landed on Bai Luan. He was more than happy to take them on. Compared with designing a whole simulated universe, this was a perfect excuse to slack off. Half a month later, the simulated universe DLC was finished, and Bai Luan had completed all of Ruan Mei's modifications. The work hadn't been nearly as painful as before. And with those two projects done, his little simulated universe was complete. The curio effect it produced was unusual, better described as an Aeon incubation pod. Curio. Aeon incubation pod description. The code of a simulated Aeon has gained true life within this miniature universe. A brand new path is being written. What had started as an attempt to build a data cultivation pod, copying erudition's data into it and injecting virus code, had evolved into something much stranger. Several curios had combined into one, producing a golden tier item and giving rise to the current effect. Bai Luan couldn't help being excited. If he could let the nascent Aeon inside the pod grow, he'd have a powerful ally should any Aeon plot against him. He might even be able to scheme back with the Aeon housed in the pod. But there was a problem. Even a minor conflict between Aeon paths could escalate into a divine war and result in assimilation. The Aeon in the incubation pod wasn't picky. Its path touched on everyone's. If it were discovered, every Aeon might come to scheme against him. The irony wasn't lost on him. To protect himself from Aeons, he had created a curio that could attract them all. It felt like creating an erudition to fight erudition. Fortunately, the system had hidden the Aeon within the curio, masking it from other Aeons' detection. Otherwise, who knew how many gazes it would draw at the moment of its birth? The newly birthed Aeon had offered Bai Luan a blessing when it came into being, making him an Aeon emissary. The power was faint from being so new, but it was real. Bai Luan immersed his consciousness into the incubation pod to meet the nascent Aeon. At first, because his initial input had been erudition's data, the Aeon had resembled erudition. Once he learned what the curio did, he fed in data from other Aeons as well. As the Aeon's dataset expanded, its self-awareness refined. It rejected the mechanical head-like form it had started with, stripping that away until only a core for thought remained. Compared to a clunky mechanical head, it now looked more like a vast satellite. Arc, he decided. I'll call you Arc. As long as Bai Luan upheld its emerging path, Arc would grow stronger, and its blessings to him would deepen. It was, in a sense, stepping on your own right foot with your left and ascending right then and there. The system's capability was astonishing, so much Aeon data brought together without immediate conflict. I guess you'll be with me for life. In any case, thank you for your blessing. Arc did not speak. Its thought core flickered a few times, acknowledgement enough. Does it not speak? Should I add a speaker? Although Arc said nothing aloud, Bai Luan felt its reply clearly enough. It preferred not to. Apparently, they could communicate without a voice. When he withdrew from the pod, he called the system in his mind. What's wrong? The system answered quietly. Although you can hide it from other Aeons, Aha has been watching. My sudden increase in strength isn't going to go unnoticed forever. He hasn't figured it out yet, but he'll see through it eventually. So can you disguise Ark's blessing as one from erudition? With the Genius Society persona as cover, it won't raise suspicions. What, are you planning to pin everything on erudition from now on? No, no. The top target for blame should always be Aha. I'll blame him forever. Then why not pretend you're an Aeon emissary of elation? Wouldn't that please him? Aha is truly blessed to have you. It's done. Thanks. Bai Luan's consciousness slipped back into his body. He looked at the incubation pod, now fashioned into a pendant, and put it on. Maybe Ark would grant blessings to others someday, but he didn't want to count on that yet. With both projects wrapped up, Bai Luan asked Heita for a vacation. The Beta Star route had opened recently, but he'd been too busy to take Inspiration Shroom there. Now he finally had time. Inspiration Shroom had been waiting for days. Bai Luan bought interstellar tickets and brought the little fungus along, paying extra credits so the ship would pick them up directly from the space station platform. Inspiration Shroom floated beside him, practically vibrating with excitement. Finally, I can go stack snowmen at the big Iron Man's place, Shroom. Yes, you can stack snowmen. Have you decided how big? It must be very, very big. Bigger than any snowman I've ever seen, Shroom. It drew a huge circle in the air to show the intended size. That big? Can you build it by yourself? Shroom. Inspiration Shroom bumped Bai Luan gently with its UFO-like base. You'll help me stack snowmen. She will help too, Shroom. Bai Luan smiled. Okay, we'll stack a giant Inspiration Shroom snowman. I also want to watch the view from the top, Shroom. I want to shout loudly from the snowman's head, Shroom. Bai Luan pictured it. Inspiration Shroom perched atop a colossal mushroom snowman, taking a deep breath and with absolute conviction shouting, "Goo goo gaga, goo goo gaga, goo goo gaga, Shroom." His smile tightened until it nearly broke. Inspiration Shroom noticed. "Goo goo gaga is a magical spell, isn't it? Every time I say it, you look so happy, Shroom." Yes, for me, it's impossible not to laugh. Inspiration Shroom looked toward the descending ship and floated excitedly. Indeed, the spell you taught me is one that makes people laugh out loud, Shroom. P.S. Chapter 111 was under review because the mention of the QQ group was deemed irrelevant by Fang Qi. It has now been revised. 117. Don't you dare say that? Since flights to Beta Star had only just opened, Bai Luan and an Inspiration Shroom were, in fact, the only passengers. The ship felt almost empty. Even so, the trip wasn't dull. The Inspiration Shroom had spent a long time at the space station and had become extremely sociable from all its interactions with the staff. It chatted away with the crew whenever they had time. When the crew were busy, the Shroom would flutter back to Bai Luan's side and stare out at the starfield through the porthole. Every so often, it would sing a few lines. Its voice was otherworldly and made anything it sang sound beautiful. Sometimes it would turn suddenly to look at Bai Luan, and he would know the odd little game was coming. The Shroom sang the first half of a line, and Bai Luan finished the second half. Afterward, they would look at each other and laugh. The staff found it a little strange, but for Bai Luan and the Inspiration Shroom, it was just how they were with each other, so comfortable they could be eccentric in public. The crew might not fully understand, but they could feel the warm mood. Approaching Beta Star. This is a newly formed planet dominated by sentient automatons. The surface environment may not yet be suitable for organic life forms. Organic passengers, please prepare the necessary protective measures. The ship landed, and Bai Luan carried the Inspiration Shroom down the gangway. Before the vessel departed, the Shroom turned and waved goodbye to the crew on board. "Bye-bye, Shroom." Bai Luan saw a flash of reluctance in the staffer's eyes. Clearly, the Shroom's charm was persuasive. Once the ship left, Bai Luan took in the docking platform on Beta Star. It wasn't hastily thrown up at all. It was impressively well built, complete and precise, the kind of efficiency and consistent quality you'd expect from sentient machines. Give them the materials, and they could ignore many constraints and still produce something exceptional. One day, he thought, this place would be full of traffic. Bai Luan passed security. The security automaton's look of bewilderment at the Inspiration Shroom made him suspect that 343 had tuned the kindling data quite cleverly. Outside the station, Shu was waiting and waving. The shroom saw Shu and zipped over, orbiting around him with enthusiastic curiosity. Bai Luan planned to deliver the source code to 343 first, so he asked Shu to take the shroom sightseeing around Beta Star. He would join them later. For now, Bai Luan and the shroom split up. Following the coordinates Shu had given him, Bai Luan soon found 343. It was in a state of intense activity, surrounded by countless bands of visible HUD streaming data, its internal network in the middle of a silent information storm. When 343 detected Bai Luan, it said, "I'll discuss the specific implementation plan with everyone later." Then it decisively shut down most communications and folded away the floating data projections. It turned to him. Its processing core hummed faintly, sounding almost like a relieved sigh, as if the machine felt something like exhaustion. Finally found a legitimate reason to rest for a moment, 343 said with a touch of dry self-awareness. Bai Luan grinned. "I should visit more often then, give you more forced rest excuses." "Use the same excuse too frequently and it loses effectiveness," 343 replied. Its gaze fixed on the storage device Bai Luan had produced. "What is this?" it asked. "I went to a planet called Jarilo 6. They had a situation similar to yours," Bai Luan answered, handing the device over. "I analyzed their data and summarized some new source code. You can use it to adjust the kindling so newly created automatons are less uniform." 343 examined the device, thinking for a moment, then gave a teasing comment. "I sometimes wonder, do robots have a higher chance of awakening as automatons when they're near you?" Bai Luan was flustered. It probably had to do with his Curio Forger ability, but the Jarilo V6 automaton awakening had truly been unrelated to him. "I think it's just a coincidence." "Haha." 343 laughed in a way that meant, "I'll keep an eye on that." "We really do need this source code," it continued more seriously. "The current kindling template has revealed some problems. While individual personalities are distinguishable, talent distributions are too concentrated." "Oh? Concentrated in what?" Bai Luan asked. "Housekeeping services," 343 said, sounding exasperated. "Truly, a virtuous distribution of talent points." It gave a half-mocking, half-helpless tone. "Every newborn automaton is naturally proficient at all domestic chores, clearly a relic of my predecessor being a household robot. I hope the source code you brought can unlock more talent possibilities for us." It carefully stored the device. Bai Luan changed the subject. "How is Beta Star doing lately?" "Our first city is nearly rebuilt," 343 said. "We plan to overhaul the planet's ecology over the next few centuries until it's suitable for inorganic life." "What will the planet look like in the end?" Bai Luan asked. "Our vision is complete metallization," 343 replied. Bai Luan snorted a little. "Cybertron in the Star Rail universe, then." On impulse, he asked, "Have you considered adding transformation modules so you can turn into trucks or planes?" "No, why would you think of that?" 343 asked, sounding amused. "Just remembered something funny," Bai Luan said casually. "Actually, our rush to open interstellar flights is related to the reconstruction plan," 343 explained. "Many of Beta Star's existing resources are useless to inorganic life forms. We hope to sell those useless materials through interstellar trade to acquire building materials and energy. That will accelerate reconstruction." "Have you found trading partners?" "Mr. Screwlum has offered to help and has put us in touch with some initial trade channels." "It's Screwlum," Bai Luan breathed. "Then I'm relieved." The Genius Society members' credibility was unquestionable. Since routes were opening, Bai Luan suddenly suggested, "Have you thought about developing some kind of unique tourism projects?" "Unique tourism projects? What do you mean?" "There should still be a lot of relics from the old civilization scattered across Beta Star, right?" "Indeed. When humans evacuated years ago, many areas were sealed off, too radioactive or otherwise dangerous, and large amounts of material and ruins were left untouched. Over time, those dangers have diminished, but we lack the manpower to systematically excavate them. If that's the case, why not make that a selling point and create an interstellar gold rush tourism program?" Bai Luan proposed. A light sparked in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "Let curious, well-protected, organic adventurers pay to enter these sites for preliminary exploration and cleanup," Bai Luan explained. "They get the thrill of treasure hunting and potential rewards. You get the sites cleared, labor, funds from their fees, and possibly valuable items recovered during excavations. Have them work for us and still pay us? 343's core seemed briefly to lag at the paradox. Of course they will, Bai Luan said with certainty. Who can resist the temptation of finding treasure in ancient ruins? You could set up official recycling stations and buy back especially valuable finds at a premium. They get excitement and potential riches. You get funds, manpower, and faster reconstruction. It's a win-win. 343 was stunned for a moment, then its tone shifted to one of realization. All this could be gained simply by opening up some junk sites we can't attend to ourselves. Bai Luan smiled, a human understanding of greed and curiosity on his face. Why not? Don't tell me, 343 began, then cut off. No, really, Bai Luan said. Right, 343 conceded. The legacy of the pre-civilization should serve some purpose. Sir, I'll try your suggestion. Bai Luan felt that once this project got rolling, Xing would probably be interested. He'd ask her later. His train of thought was interrupted by 343's voice over the line. As a leader, my experience is still too limited, 343 admitted. It seems sending 756 off Beta Star to gain experience on other mech stars was the right call, Bai Luan replied. Did 756 go on a business trip? You could say that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be this busy. I've never missed 756 so much. It seems inorganic life and organic life share the same attitude toward overtime. Bai Luan waved at the line. You're busy. I won't keep you. I'm going to find Shu. Goodbye. Have a good time. He smiled and headed out. Walking the streets of the city, he noticed how much the place had changed. Metal content was increasing everywhere, and the whole urban landscape was evolving into a true steel behemoth. If 343's vision came to fruition, the planet's surface might one day be malleable on command. As mech personalities matured, they might even create electronic companions, pets that didn't need physical bodies, maybe schools of electronic fish drifting through the air. What would this planet eventually become? Bai Luan watched the new mech life forms moving through the city. They were far livelier than when he'd first arrived, experiencing countless firsts. The first stirrings of self-awareness, the first time understanding emotions, the first discovery of purpose, the first step toward a destiny. Their outward growth looked different from a human's, but their inner development was just as significant. Time would crystallize their spiritual growth. It felt wondrous. Inspiration, Guli Guli Watcha Inspiration Shroom. A familiar tune made his face go flat. It wasn't the Inspiration Shroom singing, a passing mech was. Then another picked it up, and another. The song was spreading like a contagion. He frowned, then his phone vibrated. Shu had sent a photo, 882 leading a group of mechs building a supersized snowman. The machine-built sculpture was huge, thanks to coordinated effort. Shu's messages followed. We didn't mean for it to get this big. While we were building it, 882 showed up and wanted to help. And then it turned into this. The Inspiration Shroom sang to cheer them on, and they picked up the song. The Inspiration Shroom said it's a spell that makes them happy. Bai Luan scratched his head. Put a maximally social Inspiration Shroom in the middle of a crowd of fast-learning mechs, and the result was predictable. The song spread like a virus across Beta Star's new populace. Would visitors to Beta Star in the future all sing this tune? Are you happy? The system popped up, its tone tinged with exasperation. This is the prosperous era you created single-handedly, it added. Bai Luan felt a tangle of emotions and didn't know how to answer. Turning a meme into the cultural gene of a planet, it was strangely impressive. Forget it, he said aloud. As long as the Inspiration Shroom is having fun. He hurried toward the coordinates Shu had sent. From a distance, he could see the giant snow shroom looming like a city landmark, and the tiny Inspiration Shroom itself floating above it. The moment it saw Bai Luan, it called out in pure delight. Bai Luan, look! Gu is building a super big snowman Gu. Bai Luan's lips twitched into a grin. I see it! It's really super big. Inspiration Gululi Inspiration Shroom. The Inspiration Shroom launched into its chant again, and the mechs below, the ones polishing and assembling the snowman, echoed a few lines in mechanical resonance. The scene was surreal, part labor chant, part fervent concert cheer. Bai Luan couldn't help laughing. Shu walked up slowly and stood beside him, watching the buzzing mechs and the enormous snow shroom. He spoke with simple curiosity. "I've wanted to ask for a long time," he said. "Ask what?" "Inspiration. Guli Guli Wacha inspiration shroom. What does it actually mean?" "If you insist on a literal answer, it didn't start with any real meaning," Bai Luan said. He crouched, scooped a handful of white snow, and began to shape it. It was just a catchy melody in syllables. His fingers moved deftly. The snow in his hands felt alive under his touch, shaping quickly into a small, lifelike inspiration shroom snowman. The wondrous item's effect held. The snowman would never melt. He examined his work, satisfied. "But after all this," he added, looking up at Shu, "in our hearts, in yours, mine, and the inspiration shroom's, the phrase has taken on a different meaning." He smiled warmly. "Now, like the inspiration shroom says, it's a spell that makes people happy." Shu looked at the tiny snow shroom in Bai Luan's hand. "Can I have it? I want to put this inspiration shroom in the museum." "Why?" Bai Luan asked. "Because today, the new Beta Star people felt the charm of song for the first time, and for the first time they learned what a spell that makes you happy is." Bai Luan nodded. "You're right, this should go in the museum." He handed the snowman to Shu. Then Shu looked up again, a little shy. "Can you make another one?" Bai Luan raised an eyebrow. "This time it's different," Shu explained simply. "This time I want it." Bai Luan laughed and shook his head. "No problem." He squatted and began building another snow figure. Shu sat cross-legged on the snowdrift. Bai Luan relaxed and settled into the cold too, carving and compressing until a new, everlasting inspiration shroom snowman took shape. It would accompany Shu whenever the inspiration shroom returned to the space station. A small, living reminder of the morning the whole city learned to sing. 119. Plant a tree that bears no fruit. After a day spent playing with Inspiration Shroom on Beta Star, Bai Luan decided it was time to leave. He had flown all the way there only to stay for one day, and his reason was simple. Beta Star just wasn't that much fun. Aside from the recently reclaimed city, most of the planet was too dangerous for Inspiration Shroom. Still, despite traveling so far just to build a snowman, Inspiration Shroom had loved it. He had come by spaceship, but he didn't plan to leave the same way. His curiosity about a spaceship ride had already been satisfied. Bai Luan took out an anywhere door, waved goodbye to Shu, who had come to see them off, and stepped through with Inspiration Shroom. Shu watched the door wink out of existence. Beta Star was not yet a place where his friend could be truly content. There was a long road ahead. Back at the space station, mere hours after Inspiration Shroom had been gone, members of the Slackers group were already asking in a near-panicked tone where he had disappeared to. The space station could not afford to lose Inspiration Shroom, the way the West could not afford to lose Jerusalem. As station master, Bai Luan posted a photo of Inspiration Shroom with a message, "Gone out to play for a day, now back." Then he went to report to Heita. He found her in the lab, idly fiddling with a gun. When she saw him, she pointed it at him. Bai Luan cocked his head, puzzled. Heita pulled the trigger. A score lit up on the gun's display, 98. "Not 100? Something's wrong with this gun," she said. "What kind of device is that?" "A scoring gun." "Oh, one of those. Scores everything in the world. What's my score?" "The score isn't important." Heita set the gun down. "My score isn't very low, is it?" "Not at all. If it were very low, then it must be broken." Bai Luan picked the gun up and fired it at Heita. The display read 100. "Seems accurate enough." "Is that so?" "I, on the contrary, think it's inaccurate." "Since Miss Heita says so, it must be inaccurate," Bai Luan replied with a small smile, and then set the gun aside. "Can you contact that little one?" Heita asked. Bai Luan realized she meant Star. "I can." "Ask her if she has time to come test the simulated universe." He took out his phone and messaged, "Star, do you have time to come test the simulated universe?" "Uncle, March and I are in Belobog." Bai Luan froze. Shouldn't the train have been in Shanzhou by now? Had Star already elbowed Fantelia aside while he wasn't paying attention? "You two defeated Fantelia so quickly? How did you know?" "Your uncle still has some skills." Star sent a thumbs-up emoji. "After you're done, can you come to the space station to test the simulated universe? There's a new DLC, Star." "Got it. I'll come after we're done." "Uncle, can I ask you something?" Why so polite? Do you have time to come to Belobog's festival? Bronia said she sent you a message, but you didn't reply. Bai Luan scratched his head. Bronia had sent a message? He checked his phone. There it was. The message arrived exactly when he had been building a snowman with inspiration shroom. He'd put his phone on Do Not Disturb. Do Not Disturb delayed things, apparently. Bai Luan switched off Do Not Disturb and saw the message from Star. Star, some things on Belobog might involve you. March said Uncle has special abilities and can know things in advance. Do you know Topaz? Bai Luan thought it through. Topaz would be bringing company members to Belobog for an asset evaluation. There were assets listed under his name on Belobog, assets Edward had swapped for a spaceship. Topaz would also have discovered the technology he had left with Svarog. That technology was not native to Belobog, which must have puzzled Topaz. The engine of creation had been repaired, and then advanced tech had appeared out of nowhere. Following those clues, she would find out he was Heita's assistant. It would be a shock. I know. Star. That makes things easier. She wants to meet you. Bai Luan. I'll see if I have time. He looked up at Heita. Star's in Belobog. I want to go pick her up. How old is she that she still needs you to pick her up? Heita asked. Well, counting from when she left the space station, she isn't that old, he said. When he put it like that, she had no argument. There are matters on Belobog related to me and the company, Bai Luan added. I need to sort them out. You want me to intervene? Heita asked. No need. I can handle it, he said. Then I won't pry. Just bring Star back. If the company steps out of line, tell me. Got it. Bai Luan sent the message. I have time. I'll make a trip to Belobog. Star. I understand. He had barely rested after the trip with Inspiration Shroom and now had to board another long flight. It wasn't necessarily bad. He could sleep on the ship. Strange thing was, despite being awake for dozens of hours, he didn't feel tired. His physical condition seemed unexpectedly stronger. Ark's blessing, perhaps. Bai Luan gave Ark a silent thumbs up. Soon the ship he booked docked at the space station. After a night of sleeping on the vessel, he arrived at Jarilo Fix the next day. The festive atmosphere in Belobog was unmistakable. Streets hung with decorations, people smiling, the city alive with celebration. He followed the coordinates Star had sent and spotted her waving. After they met, Star filled him in on recent events on Jarilo. Most of it matched his memories from the previous life. Star had come to Belobog for the festival and to help run the local museum. This time, Bronia had decisively rejected Topaz. The engine of creation had been repaired, thanks to him, and the name Geological Transformation Engineering Unit fit its current mission better than the old romantic title. The original architects had already, hundreds of years ago, planted seeds whose fruit would be hope for Jarilo centuries later. Is there meaning in planting a fruit tree whose fruit you yourself cannot eat? Bai Luan glanced at the festival crowds and the smiles on people's faces. That, he realized, was the answer. The point wasn't to harvest for yourself, it was to give others something to live for. 120. We try to talk about work. Topaz felt as if she had almost been set up. Jarilo had been out of contact for a long time. The company had assumed the civilization there had died out. Now that contact had been re-established and the people were alive, their debts had to be settled. Topaz had been sent to inventory Jarilo's assets. She'd been pleasantly surprised to find a rich subterranean deposit. The automated sentinels were an unexpected bonus. Then she found the technology Bai Luan had left with Svarog, and that's when unease crept in. This wasn't the kind of equipment one expected to find on a planet supposedly on the brink of extinction. Topaz grew suspicious of the technology's origins. One of her colleagues, more blunt and greedy, suggested they seize the devices by force. The tech looked more valuable than the rest of Jarilo combined. Topaz resisted the urge. Instead, she decided to investigate where the technology had come from. Thanks to Bronia's deliberate publicity, everyone in Belobog already knew the equipment had been left by Bai Luan, and Topaz soon learned he had even repaired the planet's engine of creation. When she saw the name Bai Luan, she felt lighter. Anyone with standing in the company knew that name. 3 famous accounts across the universe, a very high-value client. Topaz was quietly pleased with herself for not having grabbed the technology or immediately reporting it to her superiors. If she'd reported it, they would have ordered a seizure, and if anything went wrong, she would have carried the blame. She had nearly walked into a trap. Her caution had likely saved her from big trouble. Bai Luan's involvement was not only alarming, it was also promising. The company rumors were that long ago he had been approachable, generous, even. A company employee had once bought invaluable technology from him for next to nothing and shot up overnight. Later, Bai Luan realized how valuable his work was and stopped selling. Lower-level staff called it a tall tale, but Topaz, in her position, knew it was true. Reality was sometimes stranger than fiction. The rumors confirmed one thing: Bai Luan attracted opportunities, and his willingness to help Jarilo suggested he could be approached. The important question remained: was Jarilo Bai Luan's private holding, or had he merely passed through and lent a hand? If it was the former, she would have to be extremely careful. If the latter, matters were simpler. If she could use the investigation to make his acquaintance and expand her network, so much the better. With that in mind and a little nervousness, Topaz went to meet him. "Topaz, isn't it?" Bai Luan said with a smile, extending his hand. "I'm Bai Luan. Star said you were looking for me." "Hello, Mr. Bai Luan." Topaz shook his hand. "I'd very much like to treat this as a social visit, but I'm here on company business. I hope you understand." "Of course," he nodded. "Let's stick to work then." He was disarmingly approachable. Topaz let out a quiet sigh of relief. "So," she began, "our survey shows some of Jarilo's assets are registered to you. What is your relationship with Jarilo?" "I was just passing by," Bai Luan said. "I helped them along the way. Any assets I acquired were accidental." "So Jarilo isn't your property?" "It's not." "Then regarding Jarilo's debt to the company, will you interfere?" "I won't interfere. The company helped them when they needed it. The debt did genuinely rescue them. Debts should be repaid, fairly. But keep your interest rates reasonable. We're all respectable people. Don't try to pull tricks in front of me." Topaz relaxed at that. Bai Luan staying out of the process was the best outcome. If the company couldn't get what it wanted, it would try to extract value elsewhere, and that would inevitably circle back to people she couldn't afford to alienate. Understood. Then Bai Luan said something that made her heart skip. "As a member of Genius Society number 85, I'm willing to vouch for Jarilo's people, to confirm they have the ability to repay." Topaz froze. The Genius Society had a new member? Bai Luan watched her reaction and asked, "Is something wrong?" She forced herself to sound cautious. "Your Genius Society number 85? He gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "What? You don't believe me? Want me to get other members to back me up? You know other members besides Miss Heita? I'd say colleagues?" His tone wavered between boasting and understatement. "Maybe assistant is more accurate. Next time I'll just say assistant." Topaz drew a deep breath to steady herself. If Bai Luan's membership was true and she reported it, it could reflect very well on her, possibly enough to earn a promotion. The rumors about the generous patron suddenly looked like real opportunity. She felt pleasantly satisfied. "Since that's the case," she said, relaxing, "I'll handle Jarilo's matters professionally. You can rest assured their decision-making will ultimately remain with them." "Good," he nodded. "One last thing. Could the company purchase the technologies there?" "Eventually, yes." Bai Luan's voice was measured, but only after they master it themselves. "The knowledge they learned from me becomes theirs. It's no longer mine. Until then, the hardware is still mine. I just left it there." He looked at her with a half-smile. "If you can't wait, you could always try to crack it." He sounded almost eager to see company programmers run into the system's firewall. Topaz declined. "No, thank you. I doubt anyone at the company is foolish enough to challenge a genius's authority for sport." "What a pity," Bai Luan said, mock disappointed, then set it aside. "Is that everything for work?" Topaz hesitated a beat, then, "Yes, that's everything." "Then we're off the clock." Bai Luan stretched casually. His relaxed manner would have been ordinary if not for his unusual reputation. "You seem different from the other geniuses I've seen." "Have you met other geniuses?" Topaz asked. "Not in person, only recordings. You look different from them." "If you think I'm different, drop the formalities. Why should one working person make things hard for another? When we finally get downtime, it's precious. Better to complain about annoying clients and relax." Topaz couldn't help smiling. His friendliness erased the intimidation she'd felt earlier in meeting a prominent figure. I think my trip won't be wasted. Jarilo has competent leaders. They can build their own future. I agree, Bai Luan said. I heard they even set up a museum. I plan to go see it myself. What a coincidence. I plan to visit it too, after work. Well then, see you later. He waved and headed off to check on Star's museum. Topaz watched him go, feeling that the trip had yielded far more than she'd expected. Caution justified, curiosity rewarded, and maybe a few new alliances quietly begun.